all our sponsors and partners. This event is powered by Federal Bank, strategic partner Darwin Platform Group of Companies, celebration partner Radico Khaitan Limited, education partner Hindustan Group of Institutions, industry partner MIDC, and OOH partner Capital Group. Business Today, Mindrush, and BT Best CEO Awards. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this stellar flagship event at Business Today in the multiverse. Now, this is our signature thought leadership conference for entrepreneurs and business leaders in India. As we gather here today, we are faced with an ever-evolving business climate that presents both challenges and opportunities. The world is changing at an unprecedented pace, and it is up to us, all of us gathered here in this room today, to adapt and course correct on the path towards success. Today we'll explore the current business climate in India and the global economy and discuss how effective leadership can drive growth and innovation. We'll hear from experts and thought leaders in the field and engage in discussions and debates right here to gain insights and ideas that can help us navigate the challenges up ahead. Now, to kickstart the day's proceedings, we have a very special welcome speech, and for that welcome address, I'd like to invite my esteemed colleague, editor at Business Today, Saura Majumdar, to deliver the welcome address. Can we have a huge round of applause, please?
Thank you, Ayush. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the 12th edition of the Business Today, Mindrush, and India's Best CEO Awards on behalf of the India Today Group and Business Today. Each year, as part of the Best CEOs special issue, we profile the sharpest minds in India Inc. and how they have steered their companies and businesses through a multitude of challenges. It is no different this time, and there are many insights to take home. Also, to me, the points that stand out are not just the robustness of a business model, but the ability to be flexible and agile. We live in extremely challenging times, and it is more often than not this strength that makes a company and its CEO stand out. Let us not forget how businesses went through great stress during and after the pandemic. Now there are geopolitical tensions to contend with, and in the midst of this extremely challenging phase, if companies have grown impressively, they deserve a lot of credit and fulsome praise. The BT-PwC India's Best CEO rankings are a celebration of that grit and gumption demonstrated by these corporate leaders who you will meet this evening. I must thank the immense contribution made in this effort by our esteemed jury, led by the inimitable Uday Kotak, the founder and director of Kotak Mahindra Bank. The other members of the jury are Rajat Dhawan, Senior Managing Partner, McKinsey & Company in India, Ramnath Krishnan, MD of ICRA, RM Vishakha, MD and CEO, India First Life Insurance, and Amit Tandon, founder and MD, Institutional Investor Advisory Services. This jury discussed and thoroughly debated each candidate before arriving at their conclusions. This year, to reflect the changing times, we've even added 7 new categories: Unicorn, PSU, Resilient CEO, Global CEO, Travel, Best Deal, and Clean Energy. I would also like to thank our knowledge partner PwC for their effort in this matter. Ladies and gentlemen, creating an organization of scale is not just an ambition, but an approach that provides ample cushion to deal with multiple shocks. We are in a period now where the experience of withstanding these shocks and sudden crises will see organizations grow even more impressively in the future. I'm quite confident that the success story of corporate India is here to stay and will drive the Indian economy and the growth story forward as we look towards a Viksit Bharat dream. The age of the Indian multinational is already here, And you will hear some of that discussion as we go along this evening. And by the end of this decade, there will be many more names on that list, I'm quite sure. It is hardly a surprise then that the recently unveiled PwC 12th Annual Global CEO Survey showed that India has now risen to the 5th position as an investment destination for global CEOs, up from 9th position just in 2023. Back home, 9 out of 10 Indian CEOs believe the Indian economy will improve, and 7 out of 10 feel confident about their company's revenue prospects over the next 3 years. As today's evening gets underway, you will have a chance to understand why some of the CEOs did what they did. Not all of the decisions they may have taken may have worked out, but for the long term, they surely set the foundations of their companies. I have no doubt that you will find today's sessions enriching as real-life instances are shared together with the key learnings that came from them. So, enjoy this evening, since we have a lot in store for you. And once again, welcome to the Business Today Mindrush and India's Best CEO Awards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saurabh, for setting the tone for a fantastic evening. It's lovely to see a jam-packed house over here, and some people standing at the back as well. We promise there'll be breaks in between, but we're going to really kickstart with our first session. The first session is aptly titled Skilling for Resilient Business Futures. In this session, we'll focus on skilling, learning, and adaptability as organizations face the challenge of adapting to dynamic business needs whilst ensuring their workforce is equipped for the future in an ever-changing business environment. Our speakers and our esteemed panel for this session include Rajni Hasija, former CMD IRCTC, Dr. S.N. Sridhara, Vice Chancellor, Hindustan Group of Institutions, Ashish Mohapatra, co-founder and CEO of Business, Satya Narayana Chhava, founder and CEO Laurus Labs, and this session will be moderated by my colleague Sakshi Batra. Huge round of applause, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In an era that's defined by rapidly changing technological advancements that we've been witnessing, also global uncertainties as well as the evolving market landscapes, it is getting more and more imperative for businesses to cultivate resilience. And that's getting more crucial than ever before. And which is why our first panel this evening is to understand the importance of skilling for building businesses which are resilient for the future. I'll begin by you, Rajni, and I want to understand from you, how can organizations today really ensure that their workforce is competitive enough, is resilient enough in the rapidly evolving technological advancements that we are faced with?
I think with the question you have given the answer itself. If the business force and the workforce in the business has to be very competitive, only then the business can be resilient one. And it is otherwise also, if the business is resilient, the competitive environment in the workforce will be there. Because unless until the workforce is motivated and competitive enough, the business cannot take off. And similarly, if the business is running a little smoothly, it will give a confidence and keeps up the motivation. Like for that, people generally believe that the growth of the organization is vertical. But somehow I beg to differ. I also believe the growth of the organization can be horizontal. Like interchangeability within the discipline, within the organization can also help in creating the competition amongst the different domains in the business. We experimented this in our company in IRCTC and we were quite successful. Where interchangeability in one domain from catering to tourism, tourism to catering, we experimented it many times. In fact, to utter surprise, I think I should inform to this house, that the great Maharaja Express which is operating, it is being operated by the IHM qualified by guys who are actually catering the expert but working in the tourism domain. So this kind of a competitiveness has to be created. This will really help. And the training has to be given a very right time. अगर आपने बाद में training दी, it is not making any sense. It has to be given a very dot at the time. Like in COVID, when we were running for the digital kind of a transformations, had we not given that training for the POS machines or the how to handle the people during the COVID through Bureau Veritas, the things would have been very difficult. So, but it really helped. It not only created the competitiveness amongst our employees, but at the same time, we could win the confidence of the customer also because we were in the mass tourism. And there the training given by Bureau Veritas, ITDC, our own organization, it really helped in creating the competitiveness. So I think you are answering my question as well. So thank you very much for that.
Right. Dr. Sridhar, let me ask you then, you deal with a lot of students. Help me understand, what specific skills and competitiveness that you teach and you ensure that, your students at your institution, they get so that whenever they go out there in the field of unforeseen challenges, they are able to cope with the changing advancements too.
Yeah, I come from education institution, and we actually have the courses which are offered starting from aeronautical engineering, aerospace engineering, and also in the liberal arts, we teach many of the liberal arts courses. So it's a philanthropy of many of these together. Now the question which you are actually mentioning is about what about the type of skilling that we should be focusing for the students so that students will become more employable or easily employable. In fact, when Infosys Narayan Murthy actually coined a phrase called many of the engineers are unemployable. The moment actually they come out of the institution, they need to be honed up again. This was his concern. Basically, we have a different outlook for that. Our founder, Dr. KCG Varghese, gave a tagline for us. He says to make every man a success and no man a failure, which means that we need to identify the talents in every person and nurture those talents in their particular field. See, for example, in the engineering fields, not only the communication skills are more important, the technical skills are also very, very important. So how are we actually addressing that to make our system more resilient is we have tied up with many industries now, not only to actually take them for internship or placement, they also actually act as the board of studies members so that the curriculum is actually altered, tuned so that this curriculum exactly fits into what is the current technology and which dynamically keeps changing. And also actually with a few of these industries, we have made an MOU in which the resource persons also we draw from the industry and a few courses in a particular program are taught by them. See, for example, we have tied up with IBM in computer science. So this IBM actually teaches our students as well as the faculty also on artificial intelligence, which is on par with the industry requirement. So usually there will be a phase lag between industry and institution. And industry always feels that the output of institution, that is the students who come into the industry, will always need to be honed, and therefore they have more gestation period and training period, etc., which is a loss for them. So now what actually I also request most of the industries and also we are working with them is, since we are giving you an input, and therefore you need to invest in institution as well, in terms of resource persons, in terms of training, etc., and that is working very well. This is how we are trying to do it.
Okay, I'll come back to you and circle back and understand more about how you're partnering with the leaders of India Inc. on that front as well. But Ashish, let me come to you now. Now, a lot of people would not probably know a little bit about your past, You were from IIT Kharagpur.
Sounds like it's dark, right?
And when you had taken your venture for investments, I think you got 73 rejections. Yeah? And after that, today you've been able to scale up your business to a $5 billion company. Yeah? And help us understand, for all the budding entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, what are the key lessons, key skills that helped you navigate through all the challenges? It's no mean number. And the kind of perseverance that you continuously showed and belief in your own venture, that even they can understand how to build a business which will be a sustainable business for the future, despite not knowing what challenges will come over a period of time.
Understood. Firstly, thank you for having me. Looking forward to a great evening of learning with all of you. Um, so I'll first tell you the story behind the 73 because it has been quoted a lot. So when we started our business, I was a venture capitalist just before starting up. So it was frankly quite easy to get the first round of funding. And then what happened is, for about a year to year and a half, we faced many rejections. Till actually I faced a journalist who asked me that, "Aapke kitne rejections हुए होंगे?" I said, "More than 50 for sure." Okay? He said, थोड़ा सा exact number बताइए ना, तो I can actually put it down. I said, "Okay, why don't you put 54?" The journalist put 54 down, and the 54 actually caught quite some fire. Then the next person asked me that 54 सही था क्या? मैंने कहा देखो ऐसा ही है, 50 plus तो था ही, आप 60 लिख दो. So 54 became 60, 60 became 64. I think 73 is where it has got cemented for about a year, but it is a lot of rejections per se. The reason we got rejected so many times after having a sail through in the first round is, I don't know if you know about Off Business. Off Business is a B2B raw material platform which actually supplies large bulky raw materials like steel, cement, chemicals, a bit of food grains and all that. We take it from the source and give it off directly to the end user who's typically a SME. So bypassing all the traders in between is what we do. Think about Amazon, Flipkart doing something for the B2C world. We do the same for the B2B world. Now obviously B2B world was very different in the sense that it required you to have financing capability, it required you to have processing capability and some of that stuff. So hence it was more challenging. So the reason we got rejected so much, particularly in our first few rounds just after the seed investment was one, ours was a very India-specific solution. It had never been attempted globally. So people used to come and ask us, hey, you know what, tell us where has it been built in China, US and stuff like that. We never had a solution to that. Second is, the fact that I used to always say that technology is an enabler for our business and we are not a tech-first business used to be something that the investors did not really like back then. People wanted tech-first businesses, particularly in the earlier parts of your entrepreneurial journey. The third was we had a huge focus on actually, turning profitable very, very quickly. And a lot of investors used to think that if we are trying to become profitable too soon, we'll probably end up making a very small business, right? So those are the kind of things why the rejections happened. But all through that journey, I must tell you, there are a few things that I learned, which is what my advice would be to people also starting up or, being in their early business careers. One is never change yourself. There was an easy way to actually, put out something which was not us or not me in the very beginning. So resist that. I think that's the first. Your best chances of success are when you are yourself, or at least most of the time yourself. That's one. The second thing is that never give up. If you are persistent, perseverant, you will finally make it. And the third thing is that build a business or build a team that actually focuses on what is truly the problem that you encounter on the ground and not really build something which is a copycat of something that has been attempted elsewhere. So those are the kind of themes that I kind of focus on.
Okay. Dr. Chava, let me understand from you, how do you see investing in employee skill programs, development, increase the global competitiveness of companies and industries at large?
Currently, the geopolitical challenges and the opportunities for the Indian manufacturing industry, especially pharmaceutical industry, are enormous. But the biggest challenge is how to get the skilled talent pool. That was the biggest challenge. If pharmaceutical industry is not growing, it's not lack of money or lack of business. I am sure it is going to be lack of talent. For us, we spend a lot of money on skilling our people, but it is very difficult to make a scientist who doesn't have a great education up to graduation, and you want to bridge that skill in 3 months and employ him. It's not easy. You can't make a scientist in 3 months. You can't make an artist in 6 months. So it has to be taught from the basics education. So the biggest challenge we face is these days many people are more focused to go into services, especially IT services. Nobody is taking up basic sciences as their career path when they pass +2. For them, nobody would like to go to BSc or other things. We have more engineers than basic science graduates in the country. That's a challenge. So that challenge will blow up in the next 10 years. So unless we act right now, we are not going to solve the problem of a decade from now. I think my request to all policymakers and educational institutions is we have to give more importance to basic sciences, because the basic sciences are very essential to build a resilient Indian manufacturing ecosystem. So I think we have to start empowering our schools, building more infrastructure for schools from small cities onwards. We only look at metros and having centers of excellence. The centers of excellence cannot make 70 million talent who can be employable. You can only, IITs and IASC can employ 10,000 students. But we need 7 crore graduates. We need 7 crore people who are entering into the workforce every year. We need to have this as a mission. Then only we will make India great in the next decade or so.
Okay, Rajni, could you add to that? Investment in skill development is something that the industry is at large are doing. All of you have agreed, and you've employed that also in your past company as well. But what is the measure? How do you measure the effectiveness of the skill development programs that you've taken in? What is the return of investment, and what are the key metrics that you employ to understand what's the success rate of the measures that you've taken?
Of course, effectiveness of the training is a direct index when the employee of the company is satisfied and his morale is high, one. That is an indirect kind of an addition. Secondly, when the company itself is gaining in its turnover and its business, it really became effective. I was not very keen in some training initially, but later on, during COVID, we all will appreciate here, I think Saurabh just has also mentioned, that it was a challenge, COVID was a challenge for the hospitality industries. Everything was stopped. Her hotel band tha, trains chal nahi rahi thi. Everything was at a halt. So for us, coming up, starting a new business was a real challenge. So we took and challenge and trained our staff through Bureau Veritas. They are not here, but I must compliment them. 600 our supervisors, and came back in the mass tourism first. It was the tourism in IRCTC that came first. Later on, we also reaped the benefit out of that, and the company gained, and we were the first one to come back with the bang after COVID. And similarly, when we were training the people, we realized that it is not only important to train our own employee, but it is at the same time, you have to train your contractors employee also, because they also require a training. They also require certain skills to present the case, because it's a COVID period.
Sure.
So we gave them RPL training. That was through Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. National Skill Development helped us, and we could train nearly 10,000 people through them. And all many of them left us also later on, because they got good jobs. They got a good training after that. But IRCTC as a company was able to come back. Training is became very effective, because indirect gain to the company had come in terms of restoring the MOU target, restoring the turnover and the profitability of the company. So the benefits are always there. They may be indirect or direct. Training doesn't go waste. You give it any time.
Right. Dr. Sridhar, I will come to you with the preparedness part, like, how are you partnering with the corporates of the industry to really ensure that the skills that you're teaching your students are those skills that are required by employers at large?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And to just add up to that, basically I would say, because we are in the teaching fraternity, we need to make our teachers first understand these knowledge and also imbibe those skills. So we have a program, something called Train the Trainer programs, wherein the industry resource persons actually train our faculty first, either in our campus, on our campus, or in the place where actually this particular skill, the arena is available there. Then these teachers come and then teach our students, and all the skill training actually will have everyday feedback, everyday testing. And that is how basically we can understand that, okay, these people have come up to this level, etc. and so on. The third very challenging point is, see, the world is moving so fast, technological advancements are very fast. Today if I am teaching one particular technology, immediately next month actually the industries will be coming and telling, no, can you teach this particular technology? We want so-and-so faculty, so-and-so number of students in this particular area. So I need to make my teachers flexible also to accept that and then learn new things and then go ahead. And we are, greatly successful in doing this type with the trainer program.
Right. Ashish, given the rapid changes that are happening, do you prefer reskilling of your existing employees or do you prefer new hiring? What is the strategy that you employ?
So I'll give you a number and an anecdote with it. So I think, so this year we will do about close to 20,000 crores of turnover, give or take, it's a number. I think 3 years back, when we were probably 1/8 the size, we had half the number of people. So the turnover of the company has practically grown between 8 to 9x, whereas the employee count has only grown by 2x, right? So the first mantra that we follow is to make sure that our people are more efficient. And the way we do it is that we never, you won't believe it, I'm 43 years old, I'm the third oldest guy in the company. So we are a very young company. The median age of our company is 24. So our mantra is take them young, upskill, reskill them, make them more efficient with good use of technology as well as resources if required from the industry. And we've always focused on that. With rapid advances that are happening in technology today, I can assure you that almost every job can be made efficient to a degree that it will at least be 2x from wherever you start at whatever level in the organization you start.
Right. Dr. Chava, I'll give the last word to you then. Looking forward, what could be the emerging trends? What could be the need of the hour when it comes to skilling, reskilling, upskilling, so that, the students of the future and the young employees could be prepared for, rapid changes that could be coming our way over the next decade or so?
I think we are involved in both research and manufacturing. We are employing a lot of digital tools to do research. So that is helping us to improve productivity of our chemists and scientists. But in the manufacturing, we cannot go to, as Ashish mentioned, to 50, 100 crore per employee. For us, as involved in manufacturing, our revenue per employee is close to 1 crore. For us to grow by another 10,000 crores, we have to employ 10,000 more people. So our growth is arithmetic to number of employees what we engage with them. But in knowledge-based and fintech-based industries, I think they can achieve 20, 30,000 crore revenue per employee. But in IT services, they can go to maybe 30, 40 lakhs per employee. But in manufacturing, where we have coupled with knowledge and then manufacturing together, we can go to up to 1 crore. You see, India has to grow from 3-4 trillion to 25 trillion, what we are talking. Imagine how much of manpower is needed for us to go take the country from this stage to next stage. We are not imagining those numbers. Those numbers are scary numbers. We are not putting any efforts to skill 70 million people. So,
right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, truly appreciate your presence on this panel, Rajni, Ashish, Dr. Sridhar, Dr. Chava. Many thanks for enlightening us with all those thoughts. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Our next session is titled Leading with Vision, Shaping an Atmanirbhar Viksit Bharat. In this session, we will hear insights and strategies for leaders to effectively navigate the complexities of today's business landscape and establish new benchmarks of excellence for organizations to emulate and shape an Atmanirbhar Viksit Bharat. Now, our next guest on stage is a special one, and so I have to give you this little bit of an introduction. Shyam Srinivasan, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Federal Bank, is credited for constantly registering healthy performance for the bank. Under his leadership, Federal Bank has grown from being a Kerala-headquartered bank to having a strong national footprint. The bank is amongst the top 6 private sector banks, both in top-line growth and in profitability. During Mr. Srinivasan's tenure, Federal Bank has grown 8 times over and is now 4 lakh crore rupees plus of a book-sized bank. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Shyam Srinivasan, MD and CEO of Federal Bank, and this particular session will be moderated by my colleague, Siddharth Sarabia. Huge round of applause yet again, please.
Thank you very much, Ayush, and a very warm welcome once again. Good afternoon. On the stage with me is one of India's longest serving bankers, a banker who came back from overseas amongst the few who did. And in a world where in the recent past we have seen big banking names go under in some ways, we've seen turmoil in the NBFC sector and all manner of issues in the financial sector, the bank that he has helmed and will continue to helm for a few more months as one of the longest serving MD and CEOs has continued to remain rock solid. And on that context, I want to ask you, is this the best state of the Indian economy, banking system, corporate confidence that you have seen in the past decade and a half, Shyam?
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for that. Yeah, I would say without a question, without a doubt, this probably looks like almost like a Cinderella moment for banking, right? For economy and certainly for banking. So everything looks in a good place. Every now and then there are patches of brilliance, but I think for a sustained period, more importantly with an outlook that looks quite positive in a rather uncertain external environment, is probably the best period I've seen in a long, long while.
Indian banking was a source of worry 10 years ago, the great NPA bubble, and reports by top brokerages used to talk about the house of debt. If you were to advise any brokerage house to write a report today on the state of Indian banking, what would be the topic that you would give them?
Wow, okay. That's a good question. I think the message that I've believed for quite some time is that, I used it actually, it is the Cinderella moment for banking, but I think the biggest message that people should take away is India is, particularly banking, is in a sweet spot, not because of by accident, it's by design. And what has happened on many counts, the fundamentals have dramatically changed. So I think whoever's coming in looking to invest, looking to participate in the India growth story, can't back a better horse. I think it's the a time when almost everything looks set for good growth. Typically a bank needs capital, needs good credit quality, and needs great governance. If you look at it, all banks, without exception, are well capitalized. All have, an industry which had mid-teens of NPA is now like 3% at an industry level. So you can't ask for a better time in terms of opportunity to both grow and participate. And of course, technology is just fundamentally re-architecting the whole space.
You mentioned the word design, and therefore I have to ask you, who are the designers of the great Indian banking turnaround?
You're putting me in a spot now. No, let me say. See, these things again don't happen by accident, right? I mean, if you say the design, if you take any slice of time, and since we're talking about the last decade, certainly the many initiatives by regulators have been quite exceptional in terms of started with the cleanup of credit, started with the level of external environment that has come in terms of the payment architecture in India is just mind-blowing, right? Today, sitting here, you and I can be talking, but within a couple of clicks, the money can move. I don't believe any country, anywhere in the world has anything like that. So one is the architecture of how money moves. Second is the portfolios having been cleaned up. Third, an economy that seems to be sort of navigating all cross currents, any external shocks quite well. So the ingredients are in place, and I would believe public sector banks, certainly the government has had a very rich role in capitalizing them, absorbing a lot of bad credit related costs. So capitalized by public sector banks, cleaned up banks because of all the regulatory changes, a superb infrastructure and payments, and a generally buoyant economy all sort of helps the process.
I don't know how many people know about the kind of technology-led work that you've done, but on a broader note, because you touched upon that point, we have one of best FMCG companies, the largest, of course, Mr. Puri here. And one of the key things that transformed FMCG engagement with Bharat, not just with India, was the trend of sachetization, very small packs, which made it more affordable. For Indian banking, what's been the inflection point, 2016 and payments, or has it been the overall recourse to Aadhaar, the India stack, KYC, which has transformed the way the retail experience is for Indian banking customers?
No, clearly the same principles, right? Whatever can be delivered in small packets is certainly the outreach is superb. So I think, like you mentioned, the Jam Trinity, the ability to do virtually anything on your device, the ability to ensure that it comes in small packets, and most importantly, I think today, sitting here as a bank, India has about 19,000 pin codes. Right? As a bank, we physically operate only in about 6,000 pin codes.
6,000 out of 90?
Yeah, as a bank, physically. But we do banking with customers in 18,000 pin codes. So you could quite imagine how the ability to reach out to the extreme corner of the country, the client may have never seen the bank in any fashion, but through a digital capability, he or she is able to onboard themselves onto the bank. Yeah, there are initiatives post that you need to do, but at least the customer gets going. So I think the biggest thing in the equivalent of sachetization would be the whole ease of opening an account, engaging with a bank from anywhere, anytime, whenever.
Are you a believer in big banks, or do you think that India needs more banks, more banking licenses to be handed out?
I think this debate will keep going on. I have a view that size is important, size matters. Being small is good, but then in the world we live in, particularly in banking, where capital is a principal, the only resource a bank has capital and money, right, deposits. The reality is when you want to scale up, you need capital. And it's not going to happen if you're not of size. So yes, you may start small, but you will see a natural gravitation towards becoming bigger. So is the answer only big banks? No. But will anybody who starts in any size and shape and form will ultimately become big or seek to become big? Yes. And I do recall, not very far from now, a few months ago, just in this very venue where you are sitting, I delivered a speech to our analysts and investors in this room. When I made the case that, why I believe consolidation in some form is real, and banks like us, we've come from being some 7th or 8th or 9th bank in size, now we're kicking the doors of being in the top 5. Right? And I do believe size matters, right? If you get into the top 5, you're at the table. Otherwise, you're on the menu card. Right? Somewhere you have to be on the table to make those decisions, ask for the money, get the capital and growth. So I think size matters, but not everybody is going to be parachuted through size. So you need to work through that process, but ultimately size will define where you sit on the table.
We started with getting a broader sense from you on the Indian economy, but the cost of capital is one of the biggest issues. Inflation seems to be moderating, growth is doing fantastic, 8%. Who would have imagined that one would see an estimate from a global agency saying 8%? Imagine, I don't think any of you a year back would have even imagined that number at 8%. Given that context, when do you think the reversal of the rate cycle in India is likely to happen?
I don't know, somebody asked you to ask all the difficult questions. No, I think if you closely observe and listen to the governor, particularly after every MPC, he makes it very clear that inflation at around 4% is the trigger for them to do any kind of activity, right? And that seems to be still a little far away. We are still in the 5-odd%. So I think a rate cut, if you will, looks more like a later part of this calendar year or early, even early next year. But it doesn't look like an imminent activity. That said, I think the message that people are, of course, rate cuts are nice. People, want to believe that their loans will get cheaper and stuff like that. We must remember that ultimately deposits also will be lower cost, right? I mean, you'll earn lower. So I don't believe it's going to be a dramatic shift. And even if it's 25 basis points, 50 basis points over a year, it would not going to change the narrative. I think the underlying predictability and consistency of an economy is more important than where the rates are. And probably the investments are likely to come as predictability increases.
Do you believe there is irrational exuberance, or there has been irrational exuberance in lending, especially on the NBFC side, and the regulatory actions that we have seen in the recent past were required?
No, I think we should not correlate the two. We must be very careful, right? I know the narrative is to try to put one and the other and conclude that this led to the other. The actions that are being taken from the regulator are not to contain exuberance. It's contain or to remedy some governance failures. I don't believe it has anything to do with anybody doing growth as long as it's compliant growth. At this juncture, credit growth, which probably the last two data points suggest slightly moderating, looks still in the high teens, right? Which is not a surprise. If the economy is growing at 7.5%, it's not odd that the credit is growing at 2x of the economy. What may stymie that if the deposit growth doesn't keep pace with that, right? So I think the more important narrative is how does money supply increase? And as we all know, money creates money. So as credit growth increases, it is going to, sort of almost ensure there is deposit growth. So I do believe the growth in credit is not being contained or constrained by, you haven't seen any bank being called up to reduce credit growth. Yes, if there are pockets of exuberance, I think that's being sort of called out. But I don't believe the current NBFC issue should be read as equal to reduction of credit growth.
Shyam Srinivasan, 13, 14 years ago, you took a call to move from a large bank to a small entity. Must have been a tough call. The Indian economy was different, the context was different, the companies that were the top 50 then, perhaps very few of them are in the top 50 today. Would you do it again today?
Absolutely, a heartbeat I would. I would do it only because the very fact that you ask us this question means something good has happened and gives the bank the opportunity to present itself in a platform like this and be recognized for that. And I do think it's a big decision for any organization and I said, being small is cute, but I think being at the table matters more. And so I think I would encourage many to do that, because what we are seeing in India is a trailer, right? That's why we're talking of Atmanirbhar Bharat and the various things. All that we are seeing, if you look at 2047 or 2035, whatever that is, what is $4 trillion? Nothing. If you're a part of a 10, 12, 14, $15 trillion, this is just still early days.
It's still early days and picture abhi baki hai. Shyam Srinivasan, we wish you all the very best for your next innings, because I know with you, picture abhi baki hi rahegi. Thank you very much for your time with us today.
Next session, which is called Made in India, Building Sustainable Global Brands from India. In this session, which I'm going to be taking notes for, we learn how ITC, one of India's largest and most diversified conglomerates, is transforming itself into a future-ready enterprise, creating world-class Indian brands that cater to the evolving needs and preferences of consumers both in India and abroad. Our next guest is none other than Sanjeev Puri, CMD ITC Limited, and this session will be moderated by Saurabh Majumdar, editor, Business Today. Can we please have you on stage, gentlemen? A huge round of applause for this one, please.
Thank you, Ayush. Good evening. And thank you, Mr. Puri, for being here. And many congratulations for winning the Best CEO Award. BT Best CEOs is an annual, very, much sought after award, I must say. And there could be no better person to sort of win it this year than ITC CEO Sanjeev Puri.
Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's Mr. Puri, and you and I have spoken multiple times. When I was a reporter covering ITC in Calcutta many years ago, Mr. Deveshwar was, of course, building what is now known as an Indian multinational. In those days, that was the first time we heard this, and he used to speak very effusively about this term. You have stepped into very big shoes. You've had, you're a career ITC person, and you've sort of stepped into his shoes over the last few years. How has the journey been since you took over, and what were the learnings over the years when you've taken charge? And we'll come to the specific areas in a bit.
Well, it's been a very interesting period. Interesting for, reasons of the way in which the macros have panned out. It's been a world, you hear the narrative of polycrisis, perma-crisis, and uncertainty. We've had all these things play out in the last few years. So that has created certain situations that businesses have never had to contend with in the past, and situations changing very fast. To that extent, I would say it's been a very challenging period for businesses, but at the same time fulfilling, because I think we've made progress. And it's also been very encouraging because the Indian economy has done well despite all these challenges which has devastated economies in many parts of the world. India has been very resilient, and in fact it's rightly said it's India's moment. So that has been a very positive and encouraging macro as far as businesses is concerned. But otherwise, I think it's been a challenging but very interesting and fulfilling period.
That's right, Mr. Puri. And over these years, ITC has truly transformed into a multi-diversified conglomerate, if I may say so. Recently, you've also demerged the hotels business. And now it's a true blue FMCG company as well, right on top of the heap, which means the topic of this discussion also we can discuss now is the building of brands. Not the cigarette brands which were well known, but FMCG and food brands. How has that transition been, and how do you actually, in a very sort of a fluid market environment, like you said, changing rapidly, also regional tastes, how do you sort of pick which are the brands which will turn out to be winners?
So that's a very interesting and very pertinent question, because this is in a way at the core of what we do and at the core of how we have grown FMCG. So let me try and encapsulate it with certain broad principles and maybe examples that we have followed. First and foremost, I think we've always believed on playing to our strengths and align our strengths to market opportunities. An earlier speaker talked about being yourself. So ITC has a DNA, it has a culture, it has some certain strengths. So we play to that, don't try and change that, and align that with market opportunities. The second belief is that, product is at the center of your brand. First, your product has to be right. Your quality has to be right. As a challenger in a competitive, globalized marketplace, second best quality has no chance to succeed. Quality by itself is not adequate. You must bring onto the table something that is superior, differentiated, or unique if you want to succeed and create a really world-class brand. That requires deep investments in research and development, and we have done that ahead of the curve. The ITC Life Sciences and Technology is the largest innovator center in the country with 800 patents. After CSIR, it ranks the next. The second very important facet to keep in mind is the brand has to be in the relevance and context
of the consumer and society. It must have relevance and therefore needs to be backed by deep insight. So institutions need that capacity for insighting. Insighting is not merely market research, it is beyond that. So you need that capacity to insight. And let me give you, a couple of examples just to say. When we wanted to create a position in the cream biscuit segment, we came out with this idea of a cookie, a filled cookie, which some of you may have experienced as dark fantasy choco fills. When we wanted to get into noodles, we came out with this insight that kids wanted to slurp, and most noodle blocks are square. Pans are round, so you break the noodle blocks. And you need non-sticky noodles because, mothers chase kids, and by the time the kids come, the noodles get lumpy. So these were insights which led us to create a product that was different, for which even the technology was not available. We had to create the technology. And we spent a lot of effort and time in getting the product right. Very simple product, and I'm sure everybody has had this product, not ours, but generally, it's the paneer pakoda. Now, if I want to sell paneer pakoda in a frozen or packaged form, to get it tasting like a fresh paneer pakoda is not easy. It took us a long period to research and get the product right, but we did not go to the market till it was right. We did research on Febble chocolates for 5 years before we actually went to the market. In Fiamma, we created the encapsulated fragrances, first time in India in Dermafique, which is the only brand, I would say, that is entirely designed grounds up for the Indian skins. And we felt, and the research showed that Indian skin needed a all light spectrum protection as compared to just UV. So a lot of investment on the product or the services is at the core of what we do.
Mr. Puri, you've also spoken, I remember our last conversation where you spoke about how AI is helping you, sort of forecast demand and know which part of the market is, sort of demanding what kind of product. So could you elaborate a little bit on how that is helping?
So before I come to that, I just want to make 2 quick points to finish up the other. While I said the product is at the core, the other point I want to make is to build brands, and another speaker earlier alluded to it. You need to have the conviction, commitment and perseverance to do that. Creating brands, creating Indian brands that are going to compete with the best in the world, it takes a lot of conviction and resources, and you have to stay the course. And you have to be committed to investing on it. And you have to create brands that have purpose. And if you don't have the conviction, don't get there, because brands will never be created if you do not want to commit the resources to it. And it's taken many years for us to do it, but now we are seeing the fruits of that. Okay, coming to, data and artificial intelligence. Now, the way we believe that this is AI and digital are really become mainstream in every work. It has to be as mundane or mainstream as and as well integrated into your work and decision making processes as, for example, is for you to look at your mails on a daily basis. So in our case, we have AI that is looking at every facet of our operations, the manner in which we do our procurement. If I buy wheat, which mandi, when to buy, what is the forecast, everything is AI determined. If somebody is going to sell on mom and pop stores, we have many SKUs. So which are the additional ones to target is all determined by AI. If one has to look at optimizing trade investments, it's all based on AI. If one wants to look at marketing mix models or moment marketing, developing creatives, if you're talking of giving daily instructions to salesmen in his own language, and there are thousands of them, all of it is Gen AI or AI based. So it's end to end and creating enormous amount of value. And just to give you a data point, and I have this data point for our paperboard business, because that's one area where it's directly relatable to the entire profitability, because manufacturing is at the core of that. So our margins have shot up by as much as 230 basis points just by application of data and AI. That's the kind of impact it has got.
230 basis points. And that is now used across the organization.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mr. Puri, I remember, we've also discussed, of course, e-Chopal was sort of ahead of its time in innovation at that time when it was first launched. You've now built, of course, on that, and now you have also ITC Mars, which is connecting the farmer to the market. Could you elaborate a bit on how that technology is working?
So you see, e-Chopal was created at a time when internet access was not available. So we had to use VSATs. Even those places didn't have power. So we had to create, we had to create batteries and solar panels, etc., to power those computers. And that was a technology which made communication available. But today's technology of ITC Mars is very different. It is all AI, Gen AI, ML based. And it's got an integrated platform. It's all the solutions for a farmer on the mobile, right from hyper-local personalized advisories to financial credit to the input marketplace if the farmer wants to buy the inputs he needs for his farm, because in the village all this is not also easily available. It's also about market linkages. So all of that is available in the handheld, and it's dynamic. So you say that I'm going to plant my crop on the 4th, based on your soil test, based on weather forecasts, blah, blah, blah. It's going to give you a hyper-local personalized advisory. Then comes some information that weather patterns are changing, so the calendar changes for it. If you're going to get heat, or if you're going to get untimely rains, immediately an advisory automatically is flashed to the farmer on what he needs to do. In fact, we had some untimely rains recently. It happened last year also. So in the places where these practices were implemented, our crops stood as they were with no impact of the rainfall, and in adjacent areas, the crops had got impacted, productivity was impacted, quality had got impacted because of the excess moisture.
So one other point which is very important is that of rural consumption. There is stress still. I mean, when we look at a slightly broader picture, and now having become a full-fledged FMCG, and also there are various businesses which depend on rural demand. How do you look at the rural stress which is building up then? Because a lot of these FMCG companies seem to be facing that right now.
I think we should first of all I am personally quite optimistic of certainly the opportunities going forward, most certainly in the medium term. And I'm very, very glad with the way the economy has progressed and is resilient. Yes, in the short term, we are seeing there's a gap between where we expect the consumption demand to be in India and what it is today. But we must we must look at it first in the context of the context of the problems that have been faced. You see, the economy has gone through COVID. It has gone through the worst of inflations. Everything has got expensive, and because of the geopolitical scenario, the rural economy is hit by extreme weather events. The crops have not performed to their levels. So all of this has certainly impacted sentiment and incomes in the short term. But with a lot of good things happening in the economy, a lot of timely policy interventions by the government, I think the MSPs are being revised, the thrust on public and public digital and physical infrastructure, the focus on FPOs, technology in agriculture, so a lot of positives there. And the fact of the matter is, despite all these problems, we are seeing that it is growing, where rest of the world is struggling to even grow, or it's rather a lot of it in terms of volume may actually be degrowing. So we should look at it in that context. It's a decent delta, and with all that is happening, and India being at the let's say globally an attractive place or a place of interest for investments, and we see this happening all the time. So I think it's medium term. I'm very, very optimistic. It is just that right now cost of the products has gone up quite a lot more than how incomes have progressed. So there will be a little bit of a lag in,
Demand coming back.
Demand coming back, but I think with this crop also is expected to be good. So hopefully in a couple of quarters we should see it much better. Having said that, I would say I still feel happy that it is still growing despite all these problems. That shows the resilience.
That of course. We are running out of time, Mr. Puri, but I'd like you to share some thoughts on, this whole ITC again was one of the early movers on the sustainability piece. I mean, well before sustainability became a buzzword, which it is today. Tell us a little bit about how ITC, across the board is using sustainability as a key pillar for growth.
So, first of all, sustainability once upon a time was seen as something nice to do. Then people said because there is a crisis, it is a must to do. For us, it is at the core of our corporate strategy. And as we have gone along the way, we have said that for sustainability, there is a business case. And there is a need to integrate it with all that we are doing. It's not an add-on or bolt-on activity. And it is part of the KPIs of every business. Every individual has it in their KPIs. And it is about simultaneously creating economic, environmental and social capital. It's not that you do one and don't do the other. It's all the three to be done together. And from a focus perspective, there are really 3-4 points I'll quickly make. One is, I think what has come right at the top of our list today is this whole piece on adaptation. While there is a lot of talk about decarbonization and mitigation today, but I think what is the one area that is less invested and less understood is adaptation. Because before the temperatures get cooler, it's going to get warmer, so extreme weather events will multiply. So we will learn to have to live in the hot new world. We'll have to get our agri-value chains to perform despite extreme weather events. Otherwise, there'll be no food to eat. 21 of the top 30 cities in India will have no groundwater by 2030. You must have heard of, Bangalore is already facing the stress this time. It's only going to get worse. So adaptation has moved right on the top. And for us, it is about agri-value chain resilience. It's about the resilience of our supply chains. So in fact, just to give you a data point, we started this climate smart agriculture several years back. And I'm happy to tell you that the districts we started earlier, 70% of them are in high resilience, high yield zones. GHG emissions are down by up to 60% and farmer incomes are up to 90% in those. So what is good for our planet is also good for the farmer. The second piece we work on is, of course, the piece on decarbonization through green infrastructure, whether it's renewable, transportation, buildings, our supply chain partners, reducing GHG emissions in the agri-value chains. The third piece we work on is nature. So that's manifests itself in terms of rainwater harvesting, which covers about 1.5 million acres, afforestation, which covers 1 million acres, biodiversity, which we have covered about 4 lakh acres, climate smart agriculture, which we have covered about 2.3 million acres. So all of these we have targets which we are going to cover. And all of these, are being done in the context of our business and completely aligned and integral to the business. That is why you're seeing the figures I'm telling you are at scale. If it was only a bolt-on and just merely a cost, it would never acquire scale.
So what's good for the planet is good for the farmer, is good for the shareholder also, as is being evidenced in the ITC counter at the markets also. Mr. Sanjeev Puri, thank you very much for speaking to Business Today and being here with us today. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Our next session is titled How Resilience Fuels Growth, India Inc.'s Competitive Edge. In this session, we'll be focusing on the strategies deployed by leading businesses across industries to foster resilience, adaptability, ensuring sustained growth. Additionally, we'll also delve into what effective leadership demands in an era characterized by turbulence and constant disruption. Our stellar panel who will be joining us on stage includes Manoj Raghavan, CEO and MD, Tata Elixir; Kushal Narendra Desai, CMD, Apar Industries; Sailesh C. Mehta, CMD, Deepak Fertilizers and Petrochemicals Corporation; and Patanjali G. Keswani, CMD, Lemon Tree Hotels. This session will be moderated by our managing editor at Business Today TV, Siddharth Sarabi. Can we have a huge round of applause, please?
Four leading lights of corporate India, four of those people who provide employment to Indian youth, four people who have dealt with multiple levels of taxation, who have also now been living under the GST regime, four people who have dealt with different consumer behaviors in Bharat and in India. Not that I intend to say that these are two separate entities, it's one, it's Bharat. And four of them here at the BT Best CEOs event. Thank you very much. What I want to do is try and keep it as rapid fire as possible, although we have a lot of time on this. And that word resilience, I'll start to the left of my panel. Pre-pandemic, did resilience ever figure in your lexicon? Was it ever discussed with your senior management? Did you even bother about resilience? Because Indians to paidaishi resilient log hote hain. So as a company that is answerable to shareholders and is supposed to delight customers, how significant has corporate India's strength been in a very, very volatile economic situation all across the world and in India?
Hello. So I have a friend here called Ravi, and we are very resilient, and I'll tell you why. Actually, all Indians should be resilient, because who eats rasgulla? Can I have a show of hands? Okay, all resilient. Because I learned a very interesting thing. You take a rasgulla and you squish it. If it comes back to shape, it is resilient. It's a fact. Resilience is getting back to shape after taking some form of hit. But if that's only if it's made of cow's milk. If it's made of buffalo milk, by the way, it is not resilient because it remains crushed. So I quite like this cow culture because it implies resilience. Anyway, the fact is that in our business, I think in many businesses in India, because of multiple other reasons besides something like COVID, survival is a function of being resilient, because you can be hit by so many different things. And in the hotel business, which is cyclical, it's a part of our risk management, but nothing like a 90% fall in income and, and 25% of your income being staff.
Absolutely, and those were times that have taught everyone a big lesson. I'll now come to the extreme right of my panel. India's effort to become resilient also means to become Atmanirbhar. And Atmanirbhar is not a new word in a way. We've been doing that for many, many decades in different ways. The public sector led one wave. We then had another wave come in, then foreign capital, and now we are seeing domestic capacity being created. As many global multinational corporations find doing business increasingly difficult, especially in the technology space in China, do you think it is now India's moment in terms of building up resilient Atmanirbhar capacities, especially in the fields that you operate in?
Yeah, I think the problems that the Western world is having with China is a sort of a great opportunity space for tech companies like us. Traditionally, a lot of the multinationals used to get a lot of work done from China, especially in the technology space. Both companies in the US as well as companies in Japan and so on used to do a lot of R&D activities, tech outsourcing and so on from China. I think with what is happening in the world, with the West sort of getting out of China, it's a great opportunity, not just in the tech outsourcing industry per se, but I would even assume in the manufacturing space, a lot of jobs and opportunities coming the India way, and I think for companies like us in the technology space, especially for certain markets, for example, like Japan, which used to have a huge dependency on China. We see that that getting really pulled out, and they're looking for options outside. Of course, we have competition from the likes of Vietnam and the Southeast Asian countries and so on. But the capacity that many of these countries have it dwarfs when compared to India. So that's a great opportunity for us, and I think companies like us definitely look forward to exploiting that opportunity.
Vishal, Manoj just spoke about the opportunity and other countries that can compete with us. 35 years ago, once the first wave of outsourcing started in a particular space, India had a natural advantage because of English-speaking skills. In today's world, in 2024, what are the natural advantages that we have to attract these sorts of companies and investment?
So I think one of the wonderful things that India offers is a very large domestic market. So, if you want to actually be a global player and you want to be, basically you need to be better, faster, cheaper, and now greener. And so by having a large domestic market, it helps you get scale. And you need that scale to actually be able to compete overseas. And what we are seeing, especially in our manufacturing business, is that the home market over here offers us that scale, to get through vertical integration and be able to get to the right cost position. When you have scale, you can also dramatically improve quality. Because, the systems that you're able to put in and the money that you're able to invest in terms of putting these things in place. I think the software industry led the way. But we are finding increasingly that in manufacturing, we've been very successful doing the same thing.
Quick interjection. We offer scale, but do we offer the same kind of margins that global companies are used to in different markets?
So in fact, interestingly, we make more money exporting product into sophisticated or more premium markets for the same like-to-like product, because there is a greater value that is attached, especially because our manufacturing products run over long life, 25 years, 30 years, 40 years. The cost of ownership there is something that's very well understood and calculated relative to India. But the acceptance of Indian products over the last few years, many sourcing agencies, utilities, all these guys have been toying around with Indian products for the last 5-7 years. With this China move, actually they've taken it much more seriously, and now, we're able to export in a really big way.
Shailesh bhai, when it comes to fertilizers, the straight up question, a huge economy, which agriculture economy, and an agriculture economy where there are fundamental issues that we keep seeing manifest every now and then. Can India be Atmanirbhar truly in this space? If not now, maybe 5-10 years down the line, and what is required to do that? Because without it, we will continue to have social unrest manifest.
So basically what we are looking at is, yes, indeed, India being so much agriculture dependent, it is a critical raw material, fertilizers. And India doesn't have the basic raw materials, meaning natural gas or even, phosphates or potash, any of these. But we have the huge market. And we have land which is, I think, something that, we are all blessed with. So from that perspective, I do feel that if there is a focus on somewhere looking at what will bring the increased productivity, and how do we look at, instead of bulk fertilizers, something which is crop specific, that is something that is going to give us, inroads. And how do we bring the agriculture productivity to global standards? in terms of, per acre, as what our Prime Minister said, more crop per drop. And from that perspective, what we could be doing could be the challenge. And that's
But
something
are
we...
our farmers willing to accept global standards? Are our farmers, in your experience, because you have great experience dealing with them at the absolute rural level, are they prepared for change? Are they prepared for a reform and to accept all that big companies and technology has to offer?
So, see, this aspect I have seen that from an external perspective, one gets a feeling that, oh, the farmer is illiterate, the farmer is not knowledgeable, doesn't want to somewhere transform and change. We have found that to be totally wrong. What we see is that the farmer indeed is very, very risk averse. And if I were in the farmer's position, I would myself be quite risk averse, because look at the things that are at stake. And the volatility the farmer looks at, weather, price, so on and so forth. But in our experience, what we have found is that if we are in a position to demonstrate, not by advertising, promotion, actual ground level demonstrate the difference, if we can convince him of the value, he will change and he will not ask for the price. For instance, in our case, in order to get across to them the more modern crop-specific fertilizers, instead of just advertising promotion, we had 60,000 demo plots. 60,000 demo plots. He has his land here, there is a small demo plot. He does what he does on his land. In the demo plot, he does what we suggest. The only promise we had taken from him, please call 10 of your friends, show it to him. Dikhna chahiye. Once he sees it, he's changed. So we need to take in the pains to convince him about the value. He will change. Definitely he will change.
I'm coming to you again because, many years ago, your company in some ways introduced Indians to spots and locations which they didn't know about, because you went and set up fairly good, decent infrastructure there. What is the future of the hospitality industry in India? Post-pandemic, we have seen a boom. If you go to major towns, you will find it very difficult to get rooms in some of the better-known properties, and prices have also gone through the roof. The Prime Minister has called for example, WED in India, and the debate that was being had recently was, is there a place in Kashmir, for example, which can sustain an Ambani wedding? So what is the future of this sector?
So I think in the past, we had a traditional approach. We would look back and try and project what the future demand would be and then all you had to do was look at supply, because supply is known 5 years out. It takes time to build a hotel. But I think we are at a very different stage in our country today. So I keep getting asked. Yesterday when I was in Bombay, I met a bunch of mutual fund guys, and they kept saying, if you look back last 15 years, demand grew by this, supply grew by this, and so on. And they are not incorrect, because the hotel industry is like this oil industry. A 1% increase in demand and a 10% increase in price is what happens, because you cannot increase supply. But I think what we are missing in our country, and we have a foremost expert here, Mr. Amitabh Kant, which I'm sure he'll look at. The fact is that we are at a different point in the history of this country. Traditionally, we always used to talk, X% growth and so on and so forth. And it reminds me of what happened when Reagan was asked as a president, what do you think of Brazil? And he said, it's a country of great potential. It will always have great potential. That means it will never be realized. And a lot of foreign investors used to say that about India. But the most interesting thing is, India has finally reached a GDP per household, where typically in the last 10 economies that hit it, there was a series of J-shaped or hockey stick growth in discretionary items, which for a very large part of the population became non-discretionary. I'll give you a simple example. 25 years ago, how many people in this room, or their parents, if they were going from Bombay to Delhi, what would they go by? The default option was train, second class AC, and the luxury option, or the discretionary option, was flight. Today there are 500,000 Indians who are flying every day. What do you look at the CAGR of this? look at the rate of growth of airline capacity. It's 1.5x in the next 5 years. Airports are growing from 150 to 250. Four-lane highways have tripled. The most interesting, and I don't know which of you track automobiles, in China in 2006, where India is today, 5% of the automobile sale was SUVs. In 5 years, 20% of 4x number of was SUVs. It grew 16 times. So actually, my daughter asked me the other day, when you look out, what are you muttering? I say, I'm counting SUVs. Okay, now here's the deal. At $7,000 per capita, which is $35,000 per household, in China, in Indonesia, and 34 years ago in Taiwan, mid-market hotel and luxury hotel demand grew 6x in 5 years. And that only happened at $2,500 to $3,000 per capita. So to me, it's very simple. I think 3/4 of discretionary items in India for hundreds of millions of Indians will become, routine. And when that happens, it's balle actually for practically most of discretionary income. I'll give you one last number.
Yeah.
Morgan Stanley, I just read this report. Today, 65% of personal consumption expenditure in India is staples, which food and shelter and that food and equivalents. And that's at GDP today. 5 years from now, that 65 becomes 35 because GDP doubles, in 7 years. But the growth of the non-discretionary, the non-fixed part is 4 times. So I think in every consumption industry in India, you are going to have an insane amount of domestic demand. And actually, that's what I am betting on.
Okay, insane amount of domestic demand. Manoj, I want to take that point and focus on the EV sector because it's something that all of us focus about, and one of the latest things that we are picking up is that while the government makes up its mind about the support scheme, demand is far outstripping the projections that some of these manufacturers had. So how significant is the EV disruption that's playing out, and how do you see it establishing itself in the next 2-3 years?
Yeah, so I think a large portion of our business caters to the automotive industry. About 50% of our revenues come from the automotive industry. And that business is seeing, rapid growth over the last 3 to 4 years. And automotive industry is sort of cyclical, but the last cycle, I think the last downturn was something around 2008, 2009 time frame. Ever since that, there have been various, whether it is the complete, electronics getting into the car, the autonomous car, and of late, EV has kept the industry going steady. And it's good. It's definitely, when I look at it, when I talk to all my customers, their primary focus is R&D on EV technologies. Everything else is sort of, put on the back burner, whether it is US, Europe, Japan, and even in India. Out of the overall budgets that go into R&D, a significant portion of it is diverted to EV. Of course, we also at the same time, in the last, I would say, quarter or so, keep reading about, hey, is this sustainable? We've, as I said, the automotive industry is also a little cyclical. So the last 3 months, a lot of data indicates that a lot of people are not happy with the overall EV market evolution also.
Yeah, that's what we are seeing overseas as well.
We're seeing overseas, yeah. You also look at it, when you talk about, customers, say in Germany and so on, when I travel and I speak to customers, right, we assume naturally that the EV vehicles will just pick up and, it'll keep increasing. But somebody who's used to driving ICE, petrol, diesel, and so on, especially on an autobahn in Germany, for example, out there driving 250 miles one way is an hour, hour and a half. People drive every day one way 250 miles to go to their office and return back. And for them, that 500-mile journey is not, the quality of experience in an EV is not that great, because they have to keep worrying about, hey, can I reach my office?
Anxiety.
The range anxiety is real. Unlike for us, where, in our roads, you can never drive at 250 miles or you can never drive at those speeds. You drive maybe, 50 kilometers or, maximum 100 kilometers a day to office and back.
Yes.
You can never think of driving 250 miles or, 400 kilometers one way. So I think there is a lot of challenges, especially even in a developed world, for EVs really to pick up. And those are the challenges that we really see, coming over.
Absolutely, and it's evolving. Kushal, you wanted to come in before I... did you want to add to this topic?
So, in terms of what we see in, as APAR, 90% of our products come from the electrical infrastructure, right, from transmission through to the last mile. The heart of the whole thing is basically, as Mr. Puri mentioned, on this GHGs, this greenhouse emissions, because what most people don't understand is that the emissions may be local, but the impact is global. So when emissions increasing in Mumbai or Delhi actually affects equally people sitting in Sydney, Sao Paulo or in Alaska.
Or you could say that when there are farm fires in Punjab and Haryana,
Actually,
Delhi NCR
that
gets
is the
smoked
fact.
out.
So, as a consequence of this, there is this huge energy transition that is taking place. And when you have, you've got today electricity is 20% of the entire energy mix. As you look out, if we have to maintain the current level of emissions, let alone improving the emissions, this energy transition, electricity has to go to 40% of the energy mix. And essentially, the only way this can be achieved is that your source of energy generation has to be without emission, and the end point consumption has to be without emission. So there is no doubt that everything has to move electric, whether it's EV cars, whether it's trains, buses, interstate, etc., etc.
Shailaji, I want to come to you and ask you a question, especially because Mr. Amitabh Kant, the G20 Sherpa, is here. We also have Sunil Mittal, somebody who started the telecom revolution. A round of applause for from the audience for them being here. And it is the capacity constraints that exist in India, which is a good thing, that even getting flying slots is now an issue at times. But Shailaji, I want to come to you. The big hand of the government in the fertilizer space, good thing or bad thing?
Everything has two sides. And from that perspective, if I might say from a historical perspective, that the agriculture productivity would have not come up but for the support of the government in terms of a policy imperative, where we looked at a way of subsidizing fertilizers to make sure that they are affordable for the farmers. But having said that, when we look at it today we do feel that the industry has matured very well, and it needs to be freed up. It needs to be somewhere treated like a normal market-driven industry. And that is where we are as an industry pushing the government to look at direct benefit transfer to the farmers, rather than something through the conduit of the fertilizer industry. So what that would do basically is, of course, it will bring the toughness of market-determined forces for the fertilizer sector, which has seen, I would say, government support for a long time, but we need to get to that state. And if that kind of policy shift happens, we will see a lot of innovation, lot of transformation in terms of the whole approach to agriculture, which today we feel it's stratified. Last 30, 40 years, not much of innovation, because you know how it is, with the government policy, it gets stratified. So what was good earlier, now we need to grow out of it. That's what I feel.
I want to come back to you for a quick one. The government has been driving much of the massive infrastructure expansion, a lot of capital investment. There are certain industries, including telecom, for example, where the private sector continues to invest, and now there will be a new auction as well. But overall, do you see private sector investment now picking up on the road that the government has basically created over the last 8-10 years?
So we've seen actually at our, we've seen a definite increase in the capex cycle that's taking place. You know, one of the parts of our business is an industrial oil business where customers, you know, they buy in small quantities, but it goes into various, you know, industries applications, right from hydraulics to compressors, etc. So you can clearly see that there is a growth taking place. And the first fill that goes in for a lubricant is a direct correlation with new equipment getting added. So we have seen that cycle that's taking place, but the biggest portion that at least I have seen with our business is the amount of solar and wind energy that's actually being put in. And interestingly, most of that investment is coming through private investment. The government is actually just playing the role of a regulator. And that itself is a huge, you know, expansion and capital boost that's happening.
So do you think it's a bit unfair that certain analysts say that the private sector is lagging behind? Not you, your company or your sector overall as far as investment is concerned.
So I think there was a lot of optimization of capital. One of the things that COVID taught all of us is that actually you can really extract more from less. But when we talk at least to a lot of our customers, they've started, their capacity utilizations have increased very dramatically.
Okay.
They're at 80-90% utilization. So a lot of capex is coming up, and my sense is that that cycle is actually definitely on.
Okay. Manoj, as we wind down the conversation, I'm tempted to ask this question because when Mr. Sunil Mittal is in the hall, I can't but observe the fact that he started the push button revolution in India. And now, 25-30 years later, we talk about the manufacture of semiconductors, and we have had massive announcements, and hopefully in a few years, we will see that sector also become strong. Did you imagine that this could be even possible 25 years ago when you, or 30 years ago when you started your career?
Absolutely not, right? I do remember, you know, approaching the semiconductor companies, both in Japan and the US 20 years ago. We used to do a lot of chip design ourselves. We have actually helped our customers in taping out silicon and so on. And, you know, just looking at the amount of investment, the money needed to set up a fab, it was mind-blowing at that point in time. And, you know, and now looking at the fact that, look, the government is also actively pushing and supporting the industry, and there are actually, you know, companies coming forward with those massive investments. I think it's a fantastic, you know, moment for the Indian industry. I think that's also because the sheer volume of chips that are used today in India, I mean, the amount of foreign exchange that goes out, you know, because, I mean, it's more than the oil that we import, right? So that's the significance of this move. And, you know.
And we'll see fruits of this effort possibly manifest in 3, 4, 5 years. Final question, and that comes to you. Will Wed in India actually succeed for the target audience for whom the Prime Minister made that announcement?
I think it's already succeeding, but I think more importantly it's demographics. We have a very young population. So what I look at is I try to calculate how many people get married every year. And since I just got remarried, I must tell you I'm part of the demographic. And I find that so encouraging with this change in income, the structural change, that I think it will boom in India. That's my view.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for what I call the makers and the builders of modern India. Sometimes private sector, corporate India gets a bad rap, but they're the ones who actually create the most number of jobs and good jobs for the youth of this country, and there can be nothing more important than that. Thank you very much to this entire panel for their time with us today. With that, it's a wrap on this session.
Thank you, Mrs. Zarabi, and your stellar panelists. I was taking down notes, Siddharth, and the number of EVs and what's happening with the SUV market. Look, here at Business Today, when we do Tech Today, we keep looking at our range anxiety, but we're happy to tell you, if you watch some of our coverage, that that's getting better, the charging infrastructure is getting better, and we're liking to coast and use regenerative braking also to add to that. Fantastic session, and the next one is another session that I'm really looking forward to, investing in the India decade. In this session, we'll focus on various aspects related to India's economic growth potential, emerging opportunities, and strategies for investors to capitalize on, especially on the back of India being the fastest growing economy in the world and likely to become the third largest in the next few years. Our next guest needs no introduction, none other than Amitabh Kant, India's G20 Sherpa, and this session will be moderated by Siddharth Zarabi, Managing Editor, Business Today TV.
Mr. Kant, a very warm welcome to this gathering. Thank you very much for making the time. The headlines say 8% growth in India for the current year. Many people still have a hard time believing that number, but tell our audience how that has been possible.
So Siddharth, I think it's about 3/4 of 8.4% plus, really. And that really demonstrates that India has been a very resilient economic powerhouse. In fact, according to IMF, India will be responsible for 20% of the economic global expansion this year. And, you know, we are doing this at a point of time when UK, Germany, Japan, all are in recession right now. And we are the 5th largest economy, but by 27 end, I expect India to surpass Japan and Germany to become the 3rd largest economy in the world. And this growth, to my mind, is a consequence of 4 key factors. First is the vast number of structural reforms that have been carried out. GST, which has now led to, you know, from 6.8 million to about 15 million plus taxpayers. So your tax base is increased very substantially, but it's growing year on year at about 15% plus. A modern bankruptcy law for the first time in India, which has brought in, to my mind, a completely new credit culture in India. Then many middle class people had got badly treated by builders in India, so you have the Real Estate Regulation Act. And you have the scrapping of vast number of rules, regulation, procedures. No country in the world has scrapped 1,500 laws, which India has done. And fifthly, to my mind, the fact that your corporate tax, the government gave away 1.45 crore rupees so that we could have our tax rate and benchmark it amongst the world's best. So that's the structural reforms bit. The second bit is the vast amount of digitization that which India has done, you know, from digital identity to bank accounts, opening 550 million bank accounts, then linking it up with Aadhaar and mobile through a massive drive, doing cashless, paperless credit, then seeing a vast number of young startups actually taking wealth creation because of that to Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. And all these new startups, Zerodha, Grow Up Stock, are all a creation of that. And then new startups like GoDigit and Acco, which give insurance in less than 1 minute. It's unheard of in any country of the world. So digitization is the second component. And the third is infrastructure, vast amount of infrastructure. So in the last 9 years, India has built 40 million houses. 40 million houses is like making one full Australia in India. It's more than the population of Australia. We've made 110 million toilets, which is like making one full Germany in India. And yeah. I mean, people laugh at it, but that's to understand the size and scale of it. We've given piped water connection to 253 million citizens of India, which is like giving piped water connection to every single individual of Brazil. And we've made 80,000 kilometers of roads in the last 9 years. So, those of you who travel would realize that actually our infrastructure in terms of road, expressway, airports, etc. is now better than Europe. And the capex spend of the government has moved up from 1% to 4%. So that's huge, huge. And the fourth bit is the huge work done for sustainability, climate action, to do 187 gigawatt of renewable, bring down the price of renewable from 21 rupees to less than 2 rupees through transparent processes, to provide electric connection to 30 million houses, and to ensure that about 110 million women in India get cooking gas connection and do not have to burn wood for their cooking purposes. And or to be able to really drive climate action in a very big way. It's been enormous. So we've been doing it in all other countries. Doing this greening has been at a green premium. What Bill Gates says that when you move from fossil fuel to green, there is a premium to be paid. But what India has demonstrated is that because of the size and scale of India, you can do this greening, move from fossil fuel to green at a green discount. So in all these areas, we've actually brought down the price in each one, like procurement of LED, 367 million LED procured. The price of LED fell by 200%. We procured about 5,600 electric buses. The OPEX part of the price, the OPEX expenditure of the electric buses was about 20% lower than the fossil fuel, than the combustion engine buses. And therefore, my belief is simply because of the size and scale of what we are doing, we are able to do it at much lower price and really transform India. And when we transform India, we are transforming lives of not merely the 1.4 billion people of India, but of the next 4 to 5 billion people of the world who will be moving from poverty to middle class.
Absolutely, and that's a brilliant answer to that question, where if any of you were wondering where that 8% came from, this is the reason that that 8% has come about. The Modi government could also be called a government of builders, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. Not only do we have a new parliament, but we have projects which we are seeing getting inaugurated pretty much every day. But I want to touch upon one issue that you yourself have been engaged with. These are the skeletons of average middle class Indian people's dreams to possess a house. Hundreds and thousands of incomplete apartments. Again, a legacy that this government inherited. You've been spending time on that. Give a sense to our audience as to where do we stand in resolving that and ensuring that un logon ko bhi apna ek ghar mil jaye.
So, government had asked me to chair a committee whose report I had given about a month and a half back. And I think many state governments are now implementing it, at least the UP government, because when you go from Delhi to Noida towards the new airport which is getting constructed, you'll see a lot of incomplete houses. We found a range of solutions for that, very practical solutions. So the UP, Mr. Yogi Adityanath found it very feasible to implement it. He's gone ahead and implemented all of them. And I think you'll see all of those houses getting fully completed, and those houses actually reaching the middle class for whom they were meant for. So the biggest beneficiary of that report will be the actual house owner who's not been able to get his houses for many, many years. These houses will get completed very shortly, and those which are completed will actually reach the middle class, irrespective of the fact that the buyer was not giving, the builder was not giving possession. We found a range of solutions for that and suggested.
And that will be perhaps in the range of thousands of apartments?
No, that will be in terms of several lakhs. In that region, about almost 12 to 13 lakhs of people will benefit from it.
Let's hear it for that. This has been a problem that's been there for many years now, and that too is getting solved. Let's move on from the real estate sector to talk about the private sector in India. 10 years ago, crisis of confidence, NPA issue, many companies going under, a regulation that was frequently changing, there was no policy certainty. Today, when a lot of analysts say that the private sector is lagging behind the government in investing, is that a fair assessment? Do you share that opinion? And if you were to, what would you say to leading lights of corporate India?
So the country had several challenges. We were in the fragile five. We have moved on to in a very short period, we've come into the top five. We were in the fragile five because we had a twin balance sheet problem. The bank balance sheets were bad. The corporate balance sheet was even worse. And we had a twin deficit problem. Both the fiscal deficit and the current deficit were both challenges. The corporate balance sheet are in top-class condition right now. And the bank balance sheet, the Indian banks have never been in better condition. In fact, my view is that India's private debt to GDP share is still low. It's at about 57-58% compared to almost about 180% in United States and 160% in many other parts of European countries. So there is a need to do more debt to the private sector of India in a systematic, transparent manner. And my view is that private sector capex will kick in now, and India will be on a long trajectory of growth for the next decade because of the private sector, not the government. The government has done its bit by putting in capex at the time when it was required, because that was the COVID period. We couldn't have expected private sector to put in money. Many of them did. But you will now see with this really growing and expanding balance sheets of the private sector, capacity utilization crossing about 75%, I'm very optimistic that private capex will kick in, and once it kicks in, that virtuous cycle of growth will be there for the next 1 decade for India.
Once private sector kicks in a really strong, meaningful manner, do you think it will address one of the bigger societal issues that we are seeing, which is the need for creating more and more jobs? Employment is being created, but because of the sheer number, it's a big issue. Do you see that will happen because the government has limited capacity in adding jobs?
So, why I say the private capex will kick in is because, when we had this challenge in the COVID era, there were two options before the government. The government could have taken a consumer-led approach, and which is to provide more resources to the consumers, but that has inflationary, that normally tends to be inflationary. Packages across the world have been inflationary. India was very tight on those packages. It put money straight into the bank accounts of beneficiaries.
Did you agree with that?
I totally agree, because the government decided that it would rather be a capex-led growth. This takes a little more time, but in the long run, a capex-led growth is far more enriching for the country over a period of time. And that's why I'm very confident that private capex will kick in. And the second thing which is happening is very good, is that the government is the policy measures, if you look at it. I was involved, actually I drove incentive scheme. So the government is getting into sunrise areas of growth. Quite often in India we've lagged behind, whether it was 2G, 3G, 4G, we've lagged years behind. 5G, we've moved forward. We've moved forward in AI. This new 10,000 crore package of procuring GPUs so that you have the computing power of India to blend both digital public infrastructure and artificial intelligence together to technologically leapfrog. In many of these, or electric vehicles or battery storage, these are going to be the sunrise areas of growth of the future, which will drive India's growth story. They will get you the big ticket, big spending money, the big earnings. They are the areas where you need to penetrate global markets. It will not be your traditional, you will not get value in traditional sectors of just food, agriculture, textiles. The world moves on in every 3 to 4 years, and you have to catch up into those new cycles of growth.
Quick interjection there. You mentioned 5G, but when it comes to 5G, the networks and the operators, if you were to ask them, would perhaps tell us privately that monetization still seems to be a distant dream.
Yeah, monetization will happen. It's a, you know, in India, we must understand it's a size and scale market. The margin is thin, but it's a lot of size and scale. And therefore, I think I'm quite sure that all these companies, they've, you know, Mr. Sunil Mittal is sitting here. His balance sheet is very good right now.
We'll hear from him.
Yeah. I mean, you know,
I think Mr. Kant is setting the stage for the next
every
auction.
award function you go to, the only award of the best CEO goes to Mr. Sunil Mittal because of his balance sheet. So,
no, but before I let you go, just one quick point on PLI. You know, how much more can the government continue to support the PLI scheme? Because, you know, there have been critics. There are people, including a famous economist now in America, who said that money was being thrown down the drain in this scheme.
So, you know, first of all, Siddharth, we must be very clear that India can't grow only on the back of services. India must actually drive on all cylinders. It must grow on manufacturing, it must grow on services, it must grow on very sustainable urbanization, it must grow on agriculture productivity. You know, the challenge for India is that 42% of your population is dependent on agriculture. You need to take this population away from agriculture and put it into manufacturing or into good urbanization. Now, manufacturing will happen if you're able to penetrate global markets. Every time India has grown, actually, if you look at the history, India has grown at 8 to 9%. But every time it's grown when exports have grown and when we've been able to penetrate global markets. And, you know, unless and until you don't have size and scale of manufacturing, it will not be possible to do. So what does PLI do? The PLI says that we'll support you year after year for 5 years. But you keep meeting your production targets. You know, first year 15%, next year 25%, third year 35%. If you don't do this, you won't get the benefit. But if you get that size and scale, you'll become a global player. So it's giving you a carrot, but it's giving you that carrot to achieve very high production targets and making you a global player. And it says we won't extend it beyond 5 years. So within the 5 years, you become a global champion. It's a scheme for making Indian companies think big and become global champions to penetrate global markets. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely, and there are champions from that sector here as well. As I let you go, you know, you have worn so many hats in your career, almost 5 decades now. Are you planning to organize a G20 again sometime soon in India?
No. Well, not G20. I just want to improve my golfing handicap now.
Okay. All the best for that, Mr. Khan. Thank you very much. As always, a pleasure having you here with us. A round of applause for Mr. Amitabh Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, for that scintillating session with some fascinating insights. And congratulations yet again on a fantastic G20. Can we have a huge round of applause for Mr. Kant as well? Our next session is aptly titled Reimagining Healthcare for a Healthier Bharat. In this session, we'll discuss the role of healthcare, technology, and patient-centric care, emphasizing Apollo's commitment to shaping a healthier future for India. Our next guest is none other than Preetha Reddy, Executive Vice Chairperson, Apollo Hospitals Enterprise Limited, and this session will be moderated by my colleague, editor at Business Today, Saurav Majumdar.
Good evening once again. And Preetha, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It would be very, very interesting to listen to your thoughts on what is clearly one of the most important areas which the Indian economy and the Indian people are looking towards, particularly in the aftermath of what we have seen over the last 2-3 years, particularly the pandemic and after. And of course, I must say that it is only appropriate that we are honoring your father, Dr. Pratap Reddy, with the Lifetime Achievement Award this year. So that is something which we really want to, he's an absolute icon, Preetha, and we all respect and love him for that. Before we start off and talk a little bit about him, I would like to know what actually are your thoughts right now as Apollo moves into a very exciting new phase of growth?
Thank you, Saurav, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I was very inspired by a book by our External Affairs Minister, Why Bharat Matters. And I think in that is a lesson for every India about how we are moving to really become from 5 to the 3rd largest economy. And having said that, I think healthcare is a fundamental right. You know, education and healthcare are a fundamental right. And there's so many lessons to be learned from the developing world. We as Indians still start looking towards the West for so many lessons, while intrinsically we have lessons within us. And I just wanted to, just to lay all the facts on the table. We have Bharat, and we have 15% of our country who are people who can literally afford to go anywhere. But they're also a group of people who are the policy makers. They're the group who really will take India into the future, and so many, sitting here, in this audience also. So that's like the very key 15% who's really going to take India, Indian healthcare, which is where we come from. But then there's this middle class, which is, right now in the 20 to 30%, but which is going to double, and all of you have data and statistics. Now, they're the ones who are really going to take us forward. And for them, I think the focus on health, whether it is manufacturing, whether it's being able to give solutions for the rest of the world, whether we can train enough manpower for our own needs and also serve the rest of the world. Can we bring, medtech? From a manufacturing perspective, we import 80% still. So can this group really give us answers to that? And once we find solutions for that, there's the remaining group who really cannot afford, high standards of healthcare, but we have to find solutions. So I think if we get these right, there will be automatic solutions for that group. And I think that's the way the healthcare is heading.
And Preetha, technology is going to play a critical role now, whether it is AI, it is the data which is critical for taking medical healthcare forward. And now we are seeing a lot of startups also coming up in this space of health tech. How do you see the evolution of the healthcare sector vis-a-vis the technological advancements, and how is Apollo using technology across its various hospitals and
So multiple things are happening. The largest investment post-COVID has actually been into health digital, health tech. Huge amounts of investments going in there. A lot of entities like us and many others have embraced digitization to a large extent because frankly there was no other option. And that lesson happened during COVID. We started Apollo 24/7, there's PharmEasy, and there are multiple others. There's a whole startup ecosystem which collaborates globally, whether it's in California or Bangalore, they're all working together to find solutions. So I think the ecosystem is moving. The second is there is just not enough manpower to heal the world. The problem is huge. And this is where the right usage of AI to be able to give us quicker, faster, more accurate diagnosis, to be able to predict the onset of disease in pockets. Can we use AI for that? And now there are a lot of solutions which have already come into place. And with vaccine, we learned and we heard that what needed 10 years to do was done in 10 months. Absolutely. So I think the usage of technology, AI, skilling manpower to, using all this is going to be solutions for the future.
Skilling is another important point, and we've discussed, there was a panel discussion earlier this evening on skilling as well. Healthcare is one area where I think there is an urgent need to have more skilled manpower, like you said. What do you think, what are your thoughts on that aspect? How do you take more and more skilled manpower into the healthcare space?
So anyway, don't call me a socialist, but I really want to say that healthcare manpower have to be given the adequate respect in what they command. Our clinicians are incredible. They do fabulous work. Our nurses are still not paid the way that they have to be. And so they leave us and they go abroad, and it happens to all of us. So I think number one is that we do have to compensate them adequately. The second problem is that not only in India but all over the world, there aren't enough people, doing this. So can we use technology to train them quicker and faster? Can we use it to assist them with some of the work which they do, which they don't have to spend long man hours, and really encourage, give them that space. Sometimes I talk to the air hostesses on a flight, and I say, you're so good and so good looking, you're doing so much. Why didn't you think of nursing as a career? And they said, no, absolutely not. So I think the glamour quotient of healthcare workers is not there. The compensation is not adequate enough. So I think if we can start communicating and talking about it, encourage more of the healthcare workforce, we will have, otherwise we're going to have a huge problem. 3 years from today, we're really going to have a difficult time.
And that's a very important point you raised, Preeta. As Apollo and as a prime mover in the healthcare space, a brand which everybody is aware of, are you looking at sort of collaborating with others in the space to create more awareness and more skilling opportunities for the people to get into healthcare?
So we work with the Skilling Council of India. We've set up centers for healthcare workers. We run 15 nursing schools, which is so inadequate if you ask me. We need to do 150 nursing schools ourselves. And then all the, we train technicians, but then that's a minuscule compared to what needs to be done. But there are multiple initiatives, and all healthcare providers are coming together to do this. And working with the government. The public-private partnerships on just on the skilling now has gone up. There's so many now happening.
You spoke earlier about Apollo 24/7, which is again a result of what we faced during the pandemic. How is that coming through? Tell us a little more about how Apollo 24/7 is shaping up when there's competition also, including from the bigger groups.
I think competition is good for everybody, because at the end of the day, the consumer does, they benefit. 24/7 now has touched over 20 million lives, and they have 19,000 PIN codes. They were planned before the pandemic, so I think when the pandemic happened, they it kick-started. There is room, because you were talking about a country of now 1.4 billion people and moving upwards. So there will be many players. There'll probably be 4 or 5 large players in this space. But I think the technology is supporting us. A lot of us use what Sunil has done. We probably have to thank him for that. So I think that's going to be like a huge asset to what many of us are doing.
Let's come to Dr. Reddy himself. You've had, really, you've observed him along with your sisters very, very closely as he set up what is today one of the biggest, chains in Asia. What are the learnings you've seen, you've taken away from observing Dr. Reddy from close quarters?
So it's actually quite simple. He's just very straight and focused on what do we have to do for that patient who walks into our doors, and uncompromising attitude towards that. The numbers and all that is very secondary to what he does. And there was this whole initiative of setting up the Proton Center. And it was a huge investment, and it took 3 board meetings to convince the board. But even today, I'm thankful to our board, but I think they did it only because it was Dr. Reddy. And I mean, by the grace of God, it's given the return it needs to do. But I'm saying this because there's been a single-minded focus on doing what is right for the patient, and I think that's a huge learning. The second is very old adage, but management by walking around. So even today, he's in Delhi and has walked around the hospital and invested into some other new technology. And the respect to the clinicians, because we are what we are because of our staff. It's not brick and mortar, it's not the machines and the technology, but it is the fabulous doctors, nurses, and support team. And I think that has been one of the lessons which he's imbibed in every manager and every one of us.
And balancing the critical need of patient care with profitability also isn't easy, but Apollo has done that very, very well. Thank you very much, Preetha, for sharing your thoughts with us, and a big round of applause for Preetha Reddy.
Well, thank you for that wonderful session. The next one is a session I'm guessing a lot of you all are looking forward to, an absolutely packed audience. And I hope you guys get a seat, because the next one is titled Leadership Talk, How to Turn Vision into Reality. In this captivating session, we'll delve into the art of transforming vision into tangible achievements, gain valuable insights, strategies, and real-life experiences that highlight how a clear vision, relentless pursuit of innovation, and bold, decisive action can turn dreams into reality. Our next guest is Sunil Bharti Mittal, Chairman, Bharti Enterprises, and this session will be moderated by Rahul Kaval, News Director, Aaj Tak and India Today, Executive Director, Business Today. Can we have a huge round of applause, please?
I was told that it's a long weekend and that Mumbai walas may find it difficult to come, but from what we see over here, far from. So thank you all very much for taking out time and joining us at the Business Today Best CEO Awards in Mindrush. Your presence means a lot to us. To talk about one of the most celebrated icons of India Inc. and one of the big winners at our awards, we are delighted to be joined by Sir Sunil Bharti Mittal, the first Indian to be knighted by King Charles III. A big honor this. It's one of the most cliched questions, but Sir Mittal ban ke kaisa lag raha hai? How does life change between not being Sir and being Sir?
No. I thankfully, as a foreign national, I don't have to put the Sir as the title, so I remain just Sunil, and that's perfectly fine. And of course, this is a rare and indeed a very special honor, and that only a handful of foreigners have received this for nearly a century. Especially, it talks a lot about India's rise on the world stage. This award is as much an award for some of the efforts I have made in Indo-UK partnership, trade ties, but importantly, I think it is truly a testimony to what India is today. A recognition of an Indian is today seen as a very, I would say, an accepted form, whereas I would say some decades back or even some years back, that would have been a very different moment. So from that point of view, I think you're seeing Indians being celebrated in various forms and shapes as CEOs of companies, as celebrated chefs around the world, as entrepreneurs, as business leaders, and of course as politicians.
It's also something that you've cultivated and worked on, whether it is Africa, whether it is Europe, the United States. Was this always part of your leadership plan and vision, or is this something that just happened along the way? Because while you're fully Desi in your orientation, you're trying to ensure that you have a very Videshi and global outlook.
I guess, your upbringing has a lot to do with it. It depends on what kind of atmosphere, environment one grows up in. As you know, I don't come from a business family, so my entire life of growing up was hardcore politics, and in later years, hardcore diplomacy, because my father was on the United Nations circuit in the last 10, 12 years. He was mostly in Beijing, New York, Tokyo. He had his offices there. So, you pick up these things, kind of get seducted into what happens in the house, what goes around. And international affairs was always a fascination for me. I was a lousy student for anything in mathematics or science, but I was good with international relations, and that's something I've always enjoyed. So besides doing business, or rather business was a medium or a vehicle for me to really enjoy the work that I mostly enjoy, and that is international relations. I have had the fortune of being the president of CII. I have chaired the International Chamber of Commerce for 7 years in Paris. I've served on the Carnegie Endowment Board, which is the foremost think tank in the world. And now I'm on the board of Council for Foreign Relations in New York, which is again a think tank. So my engagement with the UN, with OECD, with G20 by virtue of being B20, and Africa has been pretty deep, you see. So I enjoy this, and it's quite a, fortunate thing that I also create businesses alongside. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been that enjoyable.
Last time we spoke was at the Business Today India at 100 event. And at that time, you were planning for the rollout of the 5G services for Airtel. If you want to share with people sitting here what to expect next, when it comes, because 2G happened, 3G, 4G, 5G, what happens next? There's talk of 6G. What does 6G look like in the real world? And how would the lives of those sitting here get impacted? What should they expect from the future of mobile telephony?
What you have to see, the base industry, which is the industry of connectivity, is what it enables all other industries to do. 4G started a massive wave of heavy data usage in a variety of forms. It created and spawned industries which were never thought about before, because you had capacity on the network, you had speed. And these two things brought in fanciful things. They created multiple businesses around the globe. Now, when you are at the cusp of AI taking really deep roots and shape in every facet of our life, in anything that we'll do in the future, whether it's Preeta's business or Dr. Treha's business in medical science, or indeed industrial, manufacturing areas, or public services, what does this do? 5G allows you now speeds which are 20x of 4G. More importantly, the latency goes down to almost 10, 12 milliseconds, which means if a robotic surgery has to be performed in a village, you can do it in really real time. If there's a blood oozing out of an operation, something going wrong, you can control it there and then. You don't have to have a delayed response. An autonomous vehicle, if it has to brake within milliseconds, it can do so. If drones, which are going to be all over the world, they have to operate and not collide with each other, they can be taken care of. But importantly, in 5G, you can slice and dice. If you need a specific service, I can give it to you as an individual. So let's say a school bus going on an autonomous mode with children in it. That will get a very different service than a music file that is going on a Spotify. You couldn't do that in 4G. So that is the capability of 5G. You can do a lot more on a specific tailor-made design for each end use. And that's very important. And it was earlier mentioned by Siddharth, not many use cases have come through. My own view is they will come through. And my industry will not create the use cases. My industry has created a super highway. People who are brilliant in technology and all our startup ecosystem, they will create a lot of stuff. Yes, it's a bit of a disappointment that it's not come as fast as we thought.
Why do you think that's the case?
I think sometimes, technology takes time to take shape. Industrial 4.0, which we talk about, some experiments have started to happen. We are running in Bosch, we are running in Suzuki, Maruti Suzuki, some experiments. But even globally, by now, if you really look at it on the timeline, autonomous driving should have happened. It has still not taken shape. There are regulatory issues, there are still technological glitches. They are coming through, they'll come through. The drones are coming around, but it's taking time. So I would say there is a bit of a delay. But the good news is the platform is ready now. You can do what you have to do with all those fanciful things. and they will come. It's only a matter of
This
time.
is what you're seeing in your front view mirror. I'm talking about crystal gazing. From here on, what should people expect once the potential of 5G is unlocked to the extent that it can? What's the next frontier?
Adoption of AI, and you can't do that without a solid platform of 5G plus or going on to 6G. So if you have to, go beyond your device, your wearables, real-time computing, decisions being taken in real time. Look at my network. We run millions of, bytes on a second basis. How do you decipher between what is required by each segment of the market, each segment of the customers, what is important? This can only be done if the compute power is very strong at the back and equally is accessing real-time information. So what we call edge computing, you will need to do compute at the very end where the application is happening, not the submarine cables taking everything back onto internet world into the US or Singapore from the internet exchange and bringing it back. So all those things will require new technologies. If everybody in the world has to use newer technologies, latest technology, whether from defense, fighter jets, onto robotic surgeries, onto daily management of our lives, refrigerators ordering food when it gets empty, all this will require massive compute power and importantly, very high quality connectivity. Our industry, my job is to continue to be at the leading edge of that.
So you said that this is the age of AI. And we're also seeing a lot of the cutting edge innovations in artificial intelligence, largely coming out of the United States, some in China. On a more macro perspective, obviously because you've created the superhighway, it's hugely beneficial for you. But if you just keep aside your own corporate interest and look at the larger picture, do you see India as being a net beneficiary of being in the age of AI, or do you think we could end up as one of the big losers because we have a large population? Not all of them are adequately skilled to be able to harness the potential of AI. So even before we can benefit from the demographic bulge, could we end up having to deal with the negative consequences of joblessness caused by AI?
No, I remain very optimistic. I mean, every time a technology cycle has come through, right from the time of computers being introduced, when there was an outcry that they'll take away jobs, all we have seen is more industries, more jobs, more exciting opportunities have been created. So similarly, the same thing will happen here. Some jobs will go away. I mean, just to give you a crude example, Airtel had about 100 call centers at one point in time. Today, probably we may have 8 or 10. I mean, call centers are becoming a problem. So that was a big job generating areas. But the back offices haven't gone down. There is so much happening on the back end, which are not call centers, but there's a lot of digital stuff that is happening in the back, serving the bank, serving the e-commerce industry, serving many new age industries. Jobs have gone up. It's my belief, and what I hear in the chatter, in the next government, the main focus is going to be tourism, education and skills. To my mind, tourism alone, if India was to really truly achieve its potential in tourism, you're talking about millions and millions of new jobs that are going to be created. And imagine, all those people wearing those glasses which are looking at an object and you have the full history in front of you and you can tell the tourists what's going on and they can talk to you, they can see images, you can go inside, virtually inside certain monuments that you can't generally see. So there will be opportunities galore. Yes, some jobs will be lost in some areas. Menial, low quality jobs can go down, but better quality jobs will replace them in much larger quantities.
So you spoke initially of your political connections. I have two questions. One, in terms of the political and economic journey of India in the last 10 years, as an end user, how much do you think is hype and how much do you think is reality? What do you make of India's economic evolution in the past decade?
Let me try to take it in a different way. I think Amitabh spoke about scale. What does India offer? India offers massive scale. And my industry is a testimony to that. There is, when I talk to people that you charge $2.5, $3 in India to give 2 gigabytes a day, people just can't believe it. And the fact is we are reasonably okay on return on capital. You can always get better given the investments here. But scale allows in pricing. Whether from fossil fuel to green, as was discussed, this is the only country where you can actually go down. And similarly in EV that will happen. So scale is very important to keep in mind. Why India is a real story today and not just a hype, because the scale is there. 1.5 billion largely young, hungry, consuming customers wanting services, new products, gizmos, technology, gaming. I mean, you talk about anything, there's a massive amount of consumption. This is a very solid asset that is available to any nation. Then you need solid leadership. I think India was always very good. If you really look back in time, what has happened? We are the same people. I mean, we are the same Indians which were there 20 years back struggling, and we spoke about the bottom five or the laggards five or the
Fragile five.
Yeah, fragile five, to where we are today. It's the same India, it's the same resources, the same people. You sometimes have to pick yourself up, galvanize yourself, boost your morale, have the confidence that you are good. Why are you always looking at foreign products, foreign services, foreign investment to be great? I think that change has happened. That is for real, no question about it. Today, when a search company looks at a CEO of a large company or a super large company, we're talking about trillion-dollar companies, Indians come top on the list, not Chinese. And Chinese may be smart. But because India is an acceptable currency in the world, people, its heritage, its background, its culture, the diversity it offers, and of course, one begets another one. You see success stories around the world, you get more. That's for real now. India's economic growth is for real. If you were to ask me, are there areas where there is stress in the market? Yes, of course. Every economic cycle will have certain areas which will be under stress. But by and large, in a country like India, the size of India, growing at 7.5%, 8%, 8.5% completely changes the country. But hype is not bad. It's good to have hype. Sometimes you have to brand yourself well. You have to show yourself well, even better than where you are, because then you aspire to get even better. Nobody looks at a shop which is tired, which is not attractive, which is not well lit up, which doesn't have its wares displayed very well. That is I would say, prerequisite. So even that is good.
So you spoke of the murmurs you're hearing about the policy agenda for the next government. I want you to tell us what you think, which whoever comes to power should really be doing to try and step up the speed of the growth of the India story. From where we've reached, you spoke of stress that you're seeing, so to alleviate that stress and to try and march forward with greater purpose and speed, what would you like to see?
Well, I think one thing which government has done very well in the last, particularly 4 or 5 years, is putting hundreds of billions of dollars at work on infrastructure. I think we were very, very far behind on infrastructure. We as a private sector have done good on the digital infrastructure, the highway, but roads, airports, ports, railways, these are very important instruments of any economy. I think that investment would, if it would have not been made in good time, I think India would not have been able to capitalize on its true, strength. Today that is there now. And we all as private sector, as Mr. Kant mentioned, need to ride on that now. I don't think so government will pull back. They'll keep on probably investing more. You will see more privatization programs probably coming up in the next year, next government. Manufacturing, which seemed to be an area where India may have never picked up momentum, suddenly has transformed. And again, the aspiration of India, we'll make our own microchips, we will make our own semiconductor, we'll make our own electronics, we will become a manufacturing hub, is become real. It's suddenly not a hype anymore. It looked like hype 4 years back, it's become real now. So in 10 years' time from now, manufacturing will be a serious industry in this country, for the entire world, So I remain very optimist. I feel investments...
Is most of this manufacturing capacity that's coming up really just to cater to the domestic needs of the Indian economy? How much of this is India becoming a global export hub for manufacturing? I mean, there's so much talk of China plus one, but a lot of that investment really going to Vietnam, going even to Mexico because of nearshoring. Are we not really living up to the hype when it comes to manufacturing for the rest of the world?
No. First of all, Vietnam is a tiny market. When they manufacture for the world. India, when it manufactures for the world, has an advantage that it has a massive domestic market. That makes it supremely more strategically important for investors around the world. That an Apple comes here, he's saying, let me put something here. I have a very large market domestically, and yet I'll also export. Walmart comes here to look at the Indian market, but then says, I will do a $10 billion export, and ends up doing $30, $40 billion of export commitment. So it's a big plus that you come into India, you manufacture for domestic market, get your scale, and go back and sell back at a high price in the Western markets as well. So it's a great advantage.
You know, this evening is about celebrating leadership with you as the business icon. What if young people, young entrepreneurs in a small town, whether it's in Haryana or elsewhere, watching, what's the one lesson that you'd like to leave them with?
Well, I think this is a country of possibilities. This is a country of opportunities. When our time was there, when we were young, when we were growing up, accessing capital was very difficult. You needed hard assets to get money from the banks. In any case, getting money from the banks was not easy, but you needed machinery, land, assets, building. And what comes first? Money or buildings or assets? So it was always a challenge. Today, an idea is funded, and you don't even need to go to a bank. There are people lining up to fund your ideas. Think big. Think for the future. This is a country which offers opportunities. Here's a government which supports opportunities, government which fires up in ecosystems. Startups are hugely celebrated in this country now. So I would say this is India's moment. This is moment for young Indians. And they must embrace this with a lot of confidence and a lot of optimism.
One of the things you're working on now is OneWeb, satellite communications. Elon Musk is working a lot in that space as well. How do you see that getting implemented in India, given the costs and given the fact that a lot of the dark areas that you're trying to cover, anybody in that space is trying to cover, are areas where the ability to purchase and consume may not be as much. So how do you see that play out in the Indian context?
Well, first of all, satellite communications will always be complementary to what we are doing. I can't go into Himalayas and deep deserts and forests and high seas and in the skies. The only way to do that is through satellite telephony. Wherever there's a fiber, you can't beat it on pricing with a mobile telephony. Wherever there's a mobile telephony, at least in the near future, satellite can't price it well compared to that. So that leaves the dark area. But there are 3 billion people in the world who are not connected to internet. 3 billion people. India has many, even places like US and Europe have many dark areas which need to be connected. It is not going to be expensive. First of all, it's about $160, $170 per MB per month. So it's a fairly reasonably priced service, but it's more a community service. Either military will use it, Navy will use it, or you drop a terminal into a village, and through that Wi-Fi you connect all the homes. So per customer, per home will become smaller. And then keep in mind there is about 70,000 crores of USO fund which we have contributed lying in with the government. That must be used for this, these kind of services to provide community Wi-Fi through satellite to all these villages. It's a fabulous, discovery of modern minds that we now have finally. It's been a holy grail for industry how to go into those dark areas. We now finally have the solution. Use it.
Sir Sunil Mittal, thank you very much for taking our time and joining us here. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us at the Business Today Best CEO Awards. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Mr. Mittal. I must confess, as the resident tech geek at the India Today group, I was taking notes. AI, AR, VR, Apple, Elon Musk, 5G, semiconductors, gizmos. This was one of the most interesting sessions, sir. Thank you for an absolutely scintillating session. And now I'd like to call on stage for a special address. Arun Puri, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief at the India Today group. Can we please have you on stage, sir? Huge round of applause.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think we should wait for our chief guest. He's just in the lounge. I think he'll be here in a minute. Mr. Hardeep Puri. Is he coming? Oh, okay. You can bring the chai here with him. People had a good time or not here? Found it interesting? Amazing conversations. Yeah. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the 12th edition of the Business Today Mindrush and Best CEO Awards, our much awaited flagship event. We have the pleasure of having Minister Hardeep Singh Puri with us this evening. Mr. Puri, thank you for finding time in your busy schedule. Okay. I also welcome all the winners of the Business Today PwC India's Best CEO Awards. I would like to thank the jury members led by Mr. Uday Kotak, founder and director of Kotak Mahindra Bank. With their years of experience in business, coupled with their insights, drew up a list of the top performers who are the winners today. Unfortunately, Mr. Kotak couldn't be with us. He's got high fever, but he is with us in spirit. 2024 is indeed a big year with the general elections coming up. Not just in India, over 64 countries and the European Union will vote this year, representing a staggering 49% of the world's population. This year then will shape much of what is to come. Amid all this, India for the moment is in a sweet spot, as we've heard in many conversations. I would like to point out 5 reasons why this is. First, as you all know, is the China plus one phenomenon. After the pandemic, countries across the world are diversifying their supply chain. This is the most welcome development for India. We must step up and take advantage of that quickly, because this window will not be open forever. There are already encouraging trends visible. According to a study by London-based Fathom Financial Consulting, India's electronic exports to the US as a ratio of China's has already risen from 7.65% in November 2023 from 2.5% in November 2021. Second, as you all heard from Mr. Amitabh Kant, the massive push on infrastructure of this government, which is having a huge multiplier effect on the economy. The government has announced capex of 11.1 lakh crore in the interim budget, and hopefully private sector investments will follow. Third, India's digital public infrastructure, UPI, Aadhaar, ONDC, etc., has earned the admiration of the world and is proving to be the great booster for the digital age which we are living in. With the advent of AI, this will further accelerate. Fourth, the insolvency and bankruptcy code and banking reforms, which have cleaned up the balance sheets of banks, enabling them to lend for productive purposes. Fifth, the booming stock markets is a reflection of the optimism investors have in the economy. Just a couple of days ago, the Sensex breached the 74,000 mark for the first time ever. The index has registered nearly a 3 times jump when compared to the low it touched during the peak of the pandemic in 2020. And that's not all. The investor base too has more than 3 times jumped in the last 5 years. Earlier this month, the total number of unique investors on NSE crossed 90 million mark for the first time. And all this is reflected in the phenomenal GDP growth of 8.4% in the third quarter of this fiscal, and 7.6% estimated for the fiscal year 2024. This continues to make India the fastest growing major economy in the world. But despite these obvious advantages, there are challenges which need to be overcome. And this you've heard too. Most important is jobs and skilling. They continue to be areas of concern. There's been an improvement in some urban employment, but more than unemployment, India's real problem is that of underemployment, where people don't get the right jobs suitable for them. Most people in India can't afford to be unemployed, and therefore don't even register in the unemployment rates, in the statistics. Creating regular wage employment, increasing women's participation in the labor force, and improving the employability and skills of our youth remain major challenges. And talking of jobs, while we work towards increasing the share of manufacturing in our GDP from 17% to 25% over the next 10 years with schemes like PLI, we must not ignore the services sector, which is a huge job creator. And you've heard this from Mr. Sunil Mittal just now and from Mr. Amitabh Kant. Sectors like tourism, for instance, need much greater attention as it has enormous employment potential. Our performance in this field has been dismal. We have only 9.2 million tourist arrivals last year, and this includes NRIs. This is still far behind countries like Thailand, where the figure is around 28 million in 2023. There's also a concern that the disinvestment of PSUs has lost momentum. Against the budget fiscal of 51,000 crores for fiscal year 2024, the achievement so far has been lower than 12,000, far lower than rupees 12,500 crores. Giving this a serious push would be highly beneficial to the Indian economy, both in the short term and in the long term. In general, we must move from a regulatory mindset to facilitation. Recently, the US ambassador to India, while being effusive on the potential economic collaboration, was equally forthright on how our barriers, bureaucratic, regulatory, and taxation related, must be dismantled. He pointed out that FDI must shift from India, must shift from China, but is not flowing into India at the pace it ought to. Of course, this government has done a lot to address these issues and unshackle the economy, but more can and must be done. We can scarcely allow India's moment to pass. India's CEOs work in the most challenging terrain. Regulation apart, the uncertain economic environment of today's times renders long-term strategies quite meaningless. Those in charge have to be alert and nimble. I'm sure the winners this evening know that only too well, having navigated the pandemic, geopolitical tensions, supply chain disruptions, cybersecurity risks, and the emergence of artificial intelligence, and a lot more. Indian CEOs and business leaders have known to their enterprise and dogged determination to succeed. There can be no better evidence of that than the galaxy of India's best CEOs assembled here today. I have always believed the strength of India is its entrepreneurs. We are a nation of entrepreneurs. I congratulate you all for creating enterprises that we can be proud of. With a lot of pride, I welcome them here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please give these champions a big round of applause. Our chief guest, Mr. Puri, has had a long and storied career as a diplomat, trade negotiator, and central minister. In the past 2 terms of the Narendra Modi government, he has served in multiple ministries, including housing, civil aviation, commerce, and industry. His tenure across both his current ministries, petroleum and natural gas and housing and urban affairs, has been impressive. With a single-minded approach, his work has seen high levels of impact at the ground level. Minister Puri, I would request you to please take the stage to speak to us and outline your plans to make India a global economic power. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your words and also for leading us into the next very special session titled Expanding Horizons and Scaling New Heights. In this session, we'll delve into India's urban development initiatives, sustainable growth strategies, and the future of energy sustainability. It's moderated by my colleague, Siddharth Zarabi, and of course, a huge round of applause for our speaker, Hardeep Singh Puri, Union Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs and Petroleum and Natural Gas.
Mr. Minister, thank you very much for coming here and spending time. When we came to see you to invite you here, you said you'll only come for this, you won't do any things on the side, so we really appreciate that, and thank you from the entire Business Today Multiverse and the India Today group for making time for us. India is doing very well, but the government seems to be driving most of the engines of the economy. Is the private sector, in your view, not following the lead that the government is sending, and if so, why would that be the case?
First of all, I'm delighted to be here. Delighted because being in the midst of celebrity entrepreneurs, that's the term I coined in coming here, I entirely agree with Mr. Arun Puri when he talks about India being a country of entrepreneurs. I think after a long time, a government is trying to push an ecosystem and succeeding to a large extent in which the public sector has also responded with vibrant growth. In fact, if you look at the 6 large companies in the country, if you take out Reliance Industries and LIC, the other 4 are oil companies. Now, you can quarrel with the nuance of the statistic. You can't take away the hard facts. Somebody was trying to have some fun with me the other day and said, "Haan, market badhi hai to companies bhi uthi hain." So, which I didn't want to respond because, you know, after more than half a century in battling, having to navigate such situations. One day, next press conference I had, I put up a slide. I said, Nifty has gone up by 43%, and all the oil companies that you are naming have gone up in multiples thereof. Somebody twice, somebody thrice, somebody 4 times. So the public sector is doing well, but I would say about time. Because the public sector in the past did not rise to the occasion. Now when it comes to the private sector, look, I think Amitabh and I belong to the same school. 2/3 of domestic resources and mobilization comes from the private sector. I have no doubt that will always continue to be the case. But I think the time has come for the Indian private sector to shed some of the inhibitions and to accept global challenges which are theirs. I think it's low-hanging fruit for them. Why do I say that? not because many of my friends are being acknowledged globally. No, but for an entirely different reason. I think your chairman, when he was speaking, he was referring to the global situation. The honest God's truth is that large parts of a world which we were deeply influenced by, let me take the European Union to start with, they are facing economic challenges of a very high order. If you get quarter on quarter stagnant or negative growth, you are technically in a recession. There's no point in us saying, no, the recovery is there. So the fact is, it's not there. Now, I say that from the perspective of the energy sector with which I'm directly linked. I went to Germany recently. I went to Austria. I've seen what's happening in France, in the UK. So there is an anxiety factor there. But more than that, in the world's second largest economy, $19 trillion, there are issues. There are issues, and I think when the full facts get known, we'll get a clearer picture of what's happening. So when Mr. Puri says that India is a bright spot, I don't know why you use the word bright spot or sweet spot, but that's a fact. What I would like to see, this is a personal wish, I don't speak on behalf of the government, you're going to grill me on who I am and what I talk about. But I think the Indian private sector needs to step out. When I look at the energy sector, almost all the talent there, engineering and otherwise, is drawn either from India or from Indian origin people. When I talk to American companies here in the energy sector, they're employing tens of thousands of people. Can we produce enough and more quality graduates who can fill that void? Look at where the innovation is taking place. Look, it doesn't stand to reason that if an economy is just haltingly moving ahead, innovation will stop. No. But equally, you can make out a case where the economic growth is vibrant. In the energy sector, our growth is 3 times the global average. You will have more innovation taking place here. Because the innovator is also drawn to the industry which is growing. If you look at our refineries, if you look at green hydrogen, so my small message to that, I'm sorry, a long-winded answer to a very straightforward question, but I think the Indian private sector, many of them were mentally anchored in London, mentally. I'm choosing my words carefully. I used to be posted there. And they brought in some inheritance laws. They moved physically to Dubai. Today, they are centered in Dubai, but the business is not in Dubai. The business is here. So the limited submission I'm making to you is that Indian companies must become global MNCs. It's happening, by the way, in some of the areas where you would least expect pure entrepreneurial talent. I hosted a working breakfast for Mr. Gates the other day, and I had some of these youngsters there. I mean, heartwarming stories. Look at where they started, look where they've reached, and where they're going. But those of you who have, and today you're celebrating excellence. You're celebrating the best.
Right.
And these are people who've contributed to the Indian economy. And these are the people for whom going forward the Indian economy will receive more from them. But I think time is now to shed that inhibition, assume global leadership, and I think it will happen sooner than. And the private sector will, I think, play a role. My OMC's global PSUs are also doing it. They're acquiring assets outside.
Right.
But I think you have a better chance through the private sector of doing it.
For that to happen, what changes need to be made as far as government policy is concerned, the regulatory architecture is concerned, not just for the oil sector, overall?
Well, I've been on record to say that in the 7 years or so that I've been in the government, in the council and the cabinet, less than, I have never come across any suggestion which, if offered from the private sector or elsewhere, which has not been acted on by the government. I'm more aware of the action that we've taken in the ministries I'm associated with. For instance, we were told that, private capital will come into the housing sector, provided you also have an escape route. So we set up REITs. And today the money coming into the commercial segment of the private sector, I mean, unbelievable. They're coming into data centers, into warehouses, etc. Why? Because you can make your money in 8-9 years, recover your money, and then you also have an exit route. You don't get trapped. And by the way, I think ours is a first-rate record. You've never stopped any remittances. You've never tried to appropriate or confiscate any property. But anything further that needs to be done, and I could tell you what we've done in the government is completely open to advice, to suggestions, and they will be discussed and acted on.
But why, for example, did your government not allow the opportunity for private capital to take over Bharat Petroleum Corporation?
No, wait a minute. No. It's a brilliant question. Brilliant question. I joined the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas in July 2021. So it's what, 2.5 years plus? And I was amazed. And it is a very contrasting story. When I was Civil Aviation Minister, I was absolutely banging my head against the wall, and Mr. Kant helped me. And I said in Parliament one day, without any authorization, that the choice between privatization of Air India is not privatization or no privatization. The choice is privatization or the closure of Air India. And I admitted in Parliament that I don't have the capacity every year to go to my senior colleague, the finance minister, and ask for 8,000 crores. Why? Because the previous attempt at privatization was, we will retain 17% or 20%. So you make a mess of an airline for 50 years, produce an entity that is not growing, that is sucking in government support. And if you want to sell it, you will have to make a clean this thing about it. So we changed this thing. I said, privatization or closure. I'm glad I won my point. The privatization took place a few months after I was Civil Aviation Minister, but I take a large part of the credit and the blame if any has to come. And today you're in a situation, the airline is ordering thousands of planes. Indigo, Air India, between them, this is the success story in civil aviation the world over. Now let me come to BPCL. I was told कि BPCL को बेचना है. मुझे तो समझ ही नहीं आई. क्यों बेचना है? If I looked at the work culture, I went about it very quietly. I looked at the work culture of BPCL, it was amongst the best in the OMCs. I looked at the talent there, amongst the best. So I decided, instead of, I couldn't get up in Parliament and say, हम BPCL नहीं बेचेंगे, because there'd be another furor. So what I did was we quickly started turning them around. And to answer your question, in the first 3 quarters of this year, BPCL has earned more money or nearly that much money as the amount for which it was being sold by at that point of time. And today, you know, and let me say where it started. When I became Civil Aviation Minister, in Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister in July of 21, everyone I would meet, from the sheikhs in the Gulf Kingdoms, from my friends in the colder climates of Northern Europe, everybody said, हमको BPCL खरीदना. So I told my young colleague, मैंने यार सारे खरीदना चाहते हैं, आप बेचना क्यों चाहते हो? There must be something good in it. So it's just an uninitiated newcomer's minister's instincts. And then when we looked at it today, it's a success story. The former BPCL chairman, who's now the ONGC chairman, when I look at what they're doing, I mean, I want to complete this. I took the Honorable Prime Minister to the BPCL stall at the India Energy Week. And he saw an indigenously manufactured electrolyzer, which produces, you know what an electrolyzer is. All you need is cheap green energy and an electrolyzer, and you can produce green hydrogen. And it is at 30% of the cost of what an imported electrolyzer would be. So what are we discussing? So everything should not be privatized, and certainly your family assets of this kind should not be. But it's growing. These are all entities operating like private sector entities.
Mr. Puri, would I be right in saying that some people here might be thinking that this is the return of the Mai Baap ki Sarkar, you know, big PSUs, government control, BPCL नहीं बेचेंगे, oil companies को petroleum prices नहीं बढ़ा के रखने देंगे 2 साल से. Why are you interfering in the market then?
नहीं नहीं ऐसा है ना, I am one of those who was born believing in the magic of the market, but I am equally, I shed my innocence early in life. You know, I was a young trade negotiator. I must have been a total of 1981, mein, how much was I, 28 or 29 years old, when I went to Geneva, and first issue I had to deal with was trade in textiles and clothing. So I uska thodi padhai ki, and I discovered that as soon as we became competitive in the manufacture of, you know, garments are low-end manufacture. Low-end. So what they did is they took the entire trade in textiles and clothing out of the free trade rules of the GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and subjected it to a derogation. तो आप किस चीज में competitive हो उसको तो free trade rules से निकाल दो. तो वो जो बाप होता है, माई बाप या आपका बाप या सबका, उसका ये भी देखना होता है कि आपका प्राइवेट सेक्टर भी ग्रो करे, इंडियंस भी ग्रो, पर प्रोटेक्शन इतनी नहीं देनी चाहिए that you are protecting inefficiency. So you're right there. But not at all.
But sir, if I were to add Bharat Sanchar with Bharat Petroleum, what about Bharat Sanchar?
Let me stick to Bharat Petroleum. Let me tell you, because Bharat Sanchar में मैं कुछ बोल जाऊं और मंत्री को कल अगली सेशन में बुला लो. No, I don't want that. Let me tell you frankly. देखिए ऐसा है. This gentleman sitting here is now you represent what? One of the biggest.
FMCG. One of the largest such companies in the world.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's precisely what I'm saying. How did it grow? It went because it had entrepreneurial talent, everything. And now a lot of people are also in the business of essentials. Now when you talk about the oil sector, and I know a little bit about that, when global prices went through the roof, today I did a press conference and I showed that the Saudi CPU, which controls our gas pricing, went up 303%. If we had passed on that increase in gas prices globally to our consumer, believe me, it would have been a very difficult story to manage. Now let me take half a minute to that. Why do I talk about this? Because liquefied petroleum gas is made from crude oil, which is refined in our refineries. If the global prices goes there, then 85% of our requirement we are dependent on imports. So if we had allowed that price to go up, the three trilemma, availability, affordability, and sustainability, all would have gone for a 6. So we didn't tell the oil companies, this is the point I'm trying to make. I want anybody sitting here, I am very often asked this question by my friends who are in business and politics. यार आपको ऊपर से इशारा आता है, मेरे को तो अभी तक नहीं इशारा है. आपको कभी इशारा आया कि आप ये करिए? No, they were good corporate citizens, therefore they did not increase the price for the 2 years. Government stepped in by reducing the VAT in November 21 and May 22, as a result of which, in that 2-year reference period, we have the lowest petrol and diesel prices in the world, also the lowest gas price. So this is not a my baap telling them what to do. But let me tell you another piece of evidence that it's not my baap. जब उन्होंने हमसे कहा कि देखिए we behaved like good corporate citizens, पर हमारा 28 करोड़ का नुकसान हुआ, how did we react? I went to my boss and he said, this is correct, they've been good citizens. He said, क्या करना है? Then we decided इनको 28,000 करोड़ का नुकसान हुआ, 21,000 crores we reimbursed. This is not my baap telling them, come what may, you cut your profits, go into loss. Not at all. Because we are aware that they are answerable to their shareholders. They have to go to their boards for a decision. So that should prove it's not a my baap.
Wouldn't oil bonds have been an easier option?
Oil bonds, I'm glad you asked this. Yeah, I'm glad. Today I did a press conference because there is a guy whom I affectionately called, he's a friend of mine, assistant professor of the newly appointed gas university in Haryana. He made a big tweet. हमारे ज़माने में gas की price ये थी, हमने 60,000 करोड़ की सब्सिडी दी. So I had a very good, simple answer. मैंने कहा आपने 60,000 करोड़ की सब्सिडी किसको दी? वो गैस तो थी नहीं उस समय. भाई 2014 में जब मोदी जी आए the total number of gas cylinders available in the country was only 14 crores. तो आपने 60,000 crore की subsidy दे दी without providing the gas to the consumer. Then what happened after that? Something very simple. अब हमने 32,000 crore सिलेंडर कर दिए, हमने उज्ज्वला इंट्रोड्यूस कर दी है, प्राइस भी हम नीचे है, and we are utilizing that same. After all, subsidy कहाँ से आती है? Taxpayer से आती है ना? So you take from the taxpayer and you give one section. Now you're giving them 3 times free dry rations in a day. You're doing all your other expenditure. And by the way, that oil bonds, they maintained prices by issuing oil bonds for 1,41,000 crores. And poor chaps like me who came later into the ministry, we are paying back 3,50,000 crores. So these are two contrasting models. One completely fiscally irresponsible and the other rational to lift the situation.
Mr. Puri, since this is the Best CEOs Award and it's not restricted only to private sector, I have to ask you, what prompted you? Was it a ishara or wasn't there one to ensure that our headless PSUs, because the audience must know this. I think if you were to do an empirical study, you will find that the best tenure appointment of these oil marketing companies has happened during Mr. Puri's tenure. I have covered this ministry for many years. How did that happen, sir?
Yeah, how did it happen is very simple. I tell you, on 7th July, when I took over, I found 2 strange things. Every sector needs a regulator. I did not have a chairman of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board. I didn't even have a quorum. So any decision they took couldn't be taken. There's no quorum. Our ONGC, which is our largest company, I think, it used to have CMDs coming for, one of them, Alkaji, was for 3 months. And she came from the HR. No, I have nothing against HR. All streams must be allowed to go up. भाई अगर आपको इतनी बड़ी कंपनी चलानी है तो you will have to get some hard, help. So today I'm very happy to inform you, all the PSUs are well-headed, all of them are doing well, but what the government can do, and look, I have nothing, I won't say I have nothing to do with it. The Prime Minister made one of the most innovative decisions. He said कि आपका वो जो होता Public Enterprises Selection Board, it tends, I shouldn't say this because I might be faulted, but he said, let's get somebody from the private sector to head the Public Enterprises Selection Board. And we had my friend Malika Srinivasan, who's Venu's wife, and the rest is history. We have no difficulty in having an open dialogue. We know the quality of person we want. We might not know the person. We have no hesitation in recruiting from outside. And a lot of changes are taking place. Because, and this credit goes to my boss, who saw this early. Otherwise, Abhi, Amitabh, you don't mind if I say this, na? नहीं तो ये IAS वाले ना, इनका भाईचारे का ecosystem बन जाता है. एक IAS अफसर दूसरे IAS ऑफिसर को support करता है. No, Amitabh तो मेरे side में है. नहीं, foreign service का बेचारा, उनको तो आप बैठने नहीं देते कमरे में यार.
Okay, we have the IAS, the IFS, the Indian Corporate Service in some ways. But as I wind down this conversation, एक आखिरी सवाल आपसे. आपका फिर से चुनाव लड़ने का मन नहीं हुआ इस बारी?
मेरा बिल्कुल नहीं है भाई चुनाव लड़ने का. I still have a very respectable 3 years of my Rajya Sabha term left, and I'm kept not reasonably busy, but all of us are traveling relentlessly. So the answer is a flat no. मन की बात कर रहा हूं, मेरा मन नहीं है.
Thank you very much for your Man Ki Baat. I know all of you here, you and all the CEOs here have a very tight schedule, so we'll call it a day here. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much. Thank you. God bless.
CEO of the India Today Group, to express of our gratitude to the Minister. A huge round of applause, please. Thank you, good sirs. Now, just the penultimate chapter, before we get to the awards, there's also a very important ceremony that we have to do, which is calling on stage Alok Nair, COO at Business Today, to actually express a token of our appreciation to our partners and sponsors. I'd like to call on stage Alok, please. And, of course, Mr. MVS Murthy, CMO Federal Bank, Dr. SN Sridhara, Vice Chancellor, Hindustan Group of Institutions. And since Dr. Anand Jacob Verghese, Chairman of Hindustan Group of Institutions, couldn't be here, we'd also like to thank him for being a partner for this event. A huge round of applause for our partners. Now, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. The MVP is here on these easels. It's time for the launch of the special issue of the Business Today magazine that highlights the success story of India's best CEOs. The BT-PwC study celebrates these 26 outstanding business leaders across sectors who have steered their companies to a robust and sustainable growth path. We are honored to have Shri Hardeep Singh Puri, Union Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs and Petroleum and Natural Gas with us here to launch the issue. But before that, we'd like to play a quick montage for you. All right, a huge round of applause, please. This is the moment we've all been waiting for, but before that, I'd like to call on stage for the special unveiling of the issue, Sir Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, Mr. Arun Puri, Saurabh Majumdar, Alok Nair, Sanjeev Puri, Amitabh Kant, Sir, Preeta Reddy, Ma'am, and Sunil Bharti Mittal. So please, gentlemen and ladies, join us on stage. I can see the cameras are out, but we also need a huge round of applause, please, because this is the special moment of the evening. India's Best CEOs is here, the most awaited Business Today magazine issue, and the reason we are all gathered here today under one roof. Can we please request you to reveal and unveil the issue behind you, gentlemen and ladies? Ladies and gentlemen, as the centerpiece of the Business Today multiverse is the Business Today magazine. A huge round of applause, please. Thank you so much for joining us on stage. A huge round of applause. Guys, the Business Today Best CEO Awards is a very special moment for us and for all of you. And there's a very intricate methodology that I won't be able to explain. We'll have an expert on stage, Gautam Mehra, Senior Client Relationship Partner at PwC India, who will explain the methodology behind these special awards. So huge round of applause, please.
Honorable Minister, Mr. Puri, Chairman, Editor-in-Chief, Arunji, if I can use the words of Honorable Minister, celebrated entrepreneurs, leaders and friends. For the past 150 years in India, we have taken pride at PwC in associating ourselves with the best. This event, this evening, this gathering is of the best. And if I may add, amongst the best. Earlier in Davos, we released our global CEO survey, which interviewed over 4,700 CEOs from 105 countries. Saurabh Mazumdar has already spoken to you about how, very unsurprisingly, India's moved up in being one of the more preferred destinations for investment. But what stuck out for me over there was the increased confidence that we have in ourselves. When CEOs were surveyed about the optimism of growth in their own economies, the global mean was 46%. When you compare that number with those polled from India, the number shot up to 86%. I haven't seen this gap earlier. So I won't say, may the force be with us. I think it's time to say, the force is with us. I'm just going to spend a minute on the process, because as we move to the award ceremony, it's good to familiarize ourselves with how this went about. Very consistent with the past, the BT list of 500 companies was taken. A set of standard filters, some financial, audited results, and an ethical lens were applied to it. And that got us to list about 300 companies, where we pulled out data on the top line, the bottom line represented by the earnings before interest and tax, and the total shareholder returns. And just to ensure the size and scale did not overshadow the not so big, percentages were applied to the absolute numbers as well. You all may have heard of the DIKW model. So with this D and I, the data and information, the jury in their collective K and W, knowledge and wisdom, then shortlisted the winners across 4 baskets of categories. And yes, we've had the standard basket of the sectors, 13 of them, size, basis revenues, but also some new categories based on the evolving times. And the 4th bullet in the new categories is not a typo. Going by what India is today, It's how well the CEO has intertwined the local and the global. And that's why who is the best global CEO? I think it'd be out of place not to thank the leaders who have taken time out of their busy schedule to be part of the jury. So thank you. I'll also like to thank Business Today, not just for investing for 12 years in this event, but also for senior leadership members, teams to be part of this process. Of course, I'd like to thank the PwC team, without whose efforts I would not have the privilege of standing here this evening before you. We hope to continue this journey. I'm as eager as you to see who are the ultimate winners of these awards. So I'm going to pause my banter, join you over there. Have a great rest of the evening. Thank you so much.
All right, now you've understood the theory of it. Let me explain the practice. BT Mindrush and BT-PwC India's Best CEO Awards honor India's top corporate leaders at a high-profile event attended by the best in the business, as you can see. Since 2013, the BT-PwC India's Best CEOs ranking recognizes outstanding leaders across various sectors who have steered their companies to a robust and sustainable growth path and have also contributed significantly to society. This year, we celebrate the 12th edition of the awards, which is a testament to the visionary leaders who have shaped India's growth story. This year, the trailblazing titans of India Inc. across 26 categories will be honored for their outstanding achievements. Can we have a huge round of applause? We've gotten to the part of the evening that you've all been waiting for. And of course, we'll need a stellar set of presenters on stage. So can I please have on stage Minister Hardeep Puri ji, Arun Puri, and Mr. Shyam Srinivasan on stage, please, to present the awards. And before we begin, we're going to start with an AV just to tell you a little bit more about this special occasion.
It's that time of the year again. Time for the Business Today India's Best CEO Awards and the Business Today Mindrush. Since 2013,
start of BT Mindrush this evening, friends.
The much-awaited annual event has been the Maha Kumbh of Minds, where captains of India Inc. recognize the achievements of outstanding leaders. The past few years have seen industry titans like N. Chandrasekharan, N.R. Narayana Murthy, R.C. Bhargava, Nandan Nilekani, Ajay Piramal, S.N. Subramanian, T.V. Narendran, Suresh Narayanan and Salil Parekh attend the event. For over a decade, the Business Today Mindrush event has been the beacon of excellence in the Indian business landscape. This year, we celebrate the 12th edition of the awards, a testament not only to the visionary leaders who have shaped India's growth story, but to Business Today, which has followed and logged every step of India's economic path. The selection process for the BT-PwC India's Best CEO Awards is rigorous. The quantitative analysis of the companies in the BT 500 universe is followed by a qualitative analysis by a high-powered jury. This year's jury was chaired by Uday Kotak. He was ably supported by Rajat Dhawan, Ramnath Krishnan, R.M. Vishakha and Amit Tandon. This year sees trailblazing titans of India Inc. across 26 categories honored for their outstanding achievements.
Mr. Puri, could we please have you on stage? And to kickstart our award ceremony, the first award is Best CEO FMCG. And the winner is Varun Jaipuria, Executive Vice Chairman and whole-time Director of Varun Beverages. Varun has steered his family business, Varun Beverages, to unparalleled success. Under him, the firm, which bottles and distributes PepsiCo, India's entire beverage portfolio, has seen its market cap soar fourfold to 1.78 lakh crores in a 2-year span. A huge round of applause for our first winner of the evening. Congratulations, Varun. The next award is the Best CEO for Best Deal. And the winner is Debashish Chatterjee, CEO and Managing Director, LTI Mindtree. Debashish Chatterjee, or DC as he is popularly known, is a veteran of the technology services industry with 3 decades of experience. The former head of Mindtree and currently the CEO and MD of LTI Mindtree is a lifelong learner and has played a key role in the merger of L&T Infotech and Mindtree. Can we have a huge round of applause for our Best Deal, Best CEO? The next award is Best CEO Infrastructure and Capital Goods. And the winner, any guesses? Kushal Desai, CMD, Apar Industries. Kushal is a 3rd-generation businessman steering the Mumbai-based Apar Industries, which manufactures cables, industrial lubricants, specialty oils and conductors. Under his deft guidance, the company has become the largest global aluminium and alloy conductors manufacturer and the 3rd largest global manufacturer of transformer oils. A huge round of applause for Kushal Desai. Best CEO Natural Resources, and the award goes to Sailesh C. Mehta, CMD Deepak Fertilizers and Petrochemicals Corporation. Sailesh has helped Deepak Fertilizers and Petrochemicals see adjacencies in the areas where it already dominated. Under him, there has been a big shift in emphasis from being a commodity player to one offering holistic solutions. A huge round of applause for Sailesh C. Mehta. Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan, for joining us on stage. I'd like to call Mr. Sanjeev Puri on stage to deliver the next set of awards. Thank you, sir. All right, that is a photo of an Instagrammable moment, so please do proceed with that. Our next particular category, the winner is Satya Narayana Chava, founder and CEO, Loris Labs. A huge round of applause. Best CEO, Pharma and Healthcare, Satya Narayana Chava. The next category, Consumer Goods and Durables Best CEO, is Sunil Vachani, Executive Chairman, Dixon Technologies, India. A huge round of applause for Sunil. Sunil founded leading mobile handset manufacturer Dixon Technologies in 1993 as a fresh graduate who had just returned from London. It has grown by leaps and bounds today with a capacity to produce 70 million units of electronics in a year. No mean feat. A huge, huge round of applause for Sunil Vachani. Thank you, Mr. Sanjeev Puri, for joining us on stage. I'd like to call on stage Dr. S.N. Sridhara to present the next set of awards. Thank you, sir. The next category is a special one, Best CEO IT and ITES, and the winner is Manoj Raghavan, CEO and MD, Tata Elxsi. A huge round of applause for Manoj and the team at Tata Elxsi. Thank you, sir. The next category, Best CEO Real Estate. And the winner is Shishir Srivastava. The applause is already there. MD, the Phoenix Mills. A huge round of applause, please. Now everyone joins in. Congratulations, Shishir. Shishir's silent strategy, that's an alliteration, proved successful for real estate company Phoenix Mills to survive the pandemic. Under him, Phoenix raised 4,873 crores during the pandemic and invested heavily in revamping its malls. An icon of Mumbai, Phoenix Mills, and, well, we have a business icon on stage, Shishir Srivastava. Huge round of applause. Best CEO Emerging Companies. And the winner of our next award is none other than Naresh Jalan, MD Ramkrishna Forgings. A huge round of applause for Mr. Naresh Jalan. Spoken so much about travel and tourism, and the next one is a special category, Best CEO Travel. And the winner is Rajni Hasija, former CMD, IRCTC. A huge round of applause, please. Rajni's stint as the CMD of IRCTC began with unprecedented challenges as the pandemic was at its peak and train services had come to a grinding halt. But with merely 2,229 employees, she ensured that IRCTC was able to serve the country by way of community kitchens and Shramik trains to move migrant laborers safely and efficiently. A huge round of applause for our Best CEO Travel. Thank you, Dr. Sridhara, for joining us on stage. We appreciate it. And can I please have Mr. Amitabh Kant on stage to present the next set of awards. A huge round of applause for our panel of awardees on stage. The next category is Best CEO Large Companies. Any guesses about the winner? It's none other than Sanjeev Puri, CMD, ITC Limited. So that's why we had to change the awardees, sir. A huge round of applause, please. Thank you, sir. Our next category is Best CEO, Resilient CEO. And the winner is Patanjali Keswani, CMD Lemon Tree Hotels. A huge round of applause for Patanjali Keswani. An alumnus of IIT Delhi and IIM Calcutta, has worked with the Tata Group for 17 years until he turned entrepreneur. And he initially planned to build just one hotel, run it efficiently, and then take it easy and play golf and bridge. But fate had other plans, and thank God for that, we got Lemon Tree Hotels, an absolute icon. Resilient CEO of the Year, Patanjali Keswani. A huge round of applause, please. We got to keep the energy levels up because there's a bunch of other awards coming up. Thank you, sir. The Best CEO PSU, and this award goes to Pradeep Gaur, CMD Rail Vikas Nigam Limited. Pradeep steered Railway PSU, Rail Vikas Nigam Limited, into more sectors as it charts out a new course. Under him, RVNL listed on the bourses and was granted Navratna status. He has overseen the company's key initiatives, including its foray into other sectors such as ports and metro rail. A huge round of applause for our Best CEO, PSU. An interesting category coming up now, Best CEO Unicorn. And the winner of this particular award is Ashish Mohapatra, co-founder and CEO of Business. A huge round of applause for our Best CEO Unicorn. Ashish Mohapatra has forged a flourishing category leader in Of Business, a company that directly sources materials from the origin and then delivers them to SMEs, eliminating middlemen altogether. The entrepreneur and his team have also given life to 2 unicorns, all in the span of just 8 years. No mean feat. A huge round of applause for Ashish Mohapatra, our best CEO unicorn. Mr. Kant, thank you so much for joining us on stage. I'd like to call on stage Mr. Shyam Srinivasan to present the next set of awards. And Mr. Srinivasan, the first award you're going to be presenting is Best CEO Clean Energy. And the award goes to Vineet S. Jain, MD, Adani Green Energy Limited. A huge round of applause. Show Vineet S. Jain the word impossible and he will read it as I am possible. Under Jain's leadership, Adani Green Energy has grown to become one of the largest renewable energy firms in India with a current wind and solar project portfolio of 21 gigawatts, including many of its first-of-its-kind projects in the country. We're now proceeding to a very special award. It is the Business Today Best CEO Lifetime Achievement Award. And it goes to Dr. Pratap C. Reddy, Founder Chairman, Apollo Hospitals. And to collect this award, I'd like to call on stage Preeta Reddy, Executive Vice Chairperson, Apollo Hospitals Enterprise. And of course, there's a special message from Dr. Pratap C. Reddy. If we could just cue that on stage, please.
Namaste. For us today is a very important day. 40 years since Apollo has started on a mission to make world-class healthcare available for all our people in this part of the world. The goal was to make top-notch medical services accessible geographically and also affordable by lowering a cost to almost a tenth of when compared to the Western nations. This success earned us the trust of more than 100 million patients from across the world who came to Apollo from 160 countries. And it also helped us in positioning India as a global healthcare destination for best-in-class healthcare.
A huge round of applause for the Lifetime Achievement Award. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting the award as well. We're all warmed up and now there's 2 very special awards coming your way. This one's a special one for Impact Leader of the Year. All right, this one is indeed a special one. Impact Leader of the Year. And it goes to none other than Amitabh Kant, G20 Sherpa, India. Amitabh Kant is an expert policymaker and an administrator par excellence. He was a key player in making India's G20 presidency a resounding success as its Sherpa. His strategic acumen and relentless commitment has played a significant role in the country's pursuit of becoming a global manufacturing hub with the Make in India initiative. A huge round of applause for our Impact Leader of the Year, Mr. Amitabh Kant. Mr. Kant, before you leave, Mr. Kant, sir, we need you to say just a couple of words, please. Okay, so you can come right here.
You know, these awards are meant for very distinguished achievers of the private sector. You know, all distinguished captains of the industry. Mr. Hardeep Puri tells me you're the only poor government babu who's landed up here. You know.
I have never allowed anyone to quote me, and certainly out of context. I congratulated him and I said, well deserved, even though you are a civil servant. I said that.
Well, he's my great well-wisher, mentor, guide.
We are a mutual admiration society, so it's okay. Don't take it seriously.
Thank you, good sirs. That's the kind of banter we want at the BT Best CEO Awards. A huge round of applause, please. And now it's the moment you've all been waiting for. The Business Today Best CEO Awards Business Icon of the Year. And it goes to none other than Sunil Bharti Mittal, Chairman Bharti Enterprises. Sunil Bharti Mittal is one of the pioneers of mobile telephony in India. He needs no introduction. He spent a lifetime in telecom creating the mammoth that we know as Bharti Airtel. He has steered the company through many a crisis and kept the business on a sound technological footing, and also gave us one of the most scintillating sessions of BT Mindrush and Best CEOs. Sir, please, could you share a couple of your words?
Well, thank you very much. I think I've already spoken earlier in the evening. All I would say is I received this honor with great responsibility, importantly on behalf of thousands and thousands of people who have made the Airtel a great success story, not just in India, but globally. Today, being the second largest mobile operator in the world, I think is a testimony to the strength of India, India's entrepreneurship, India's management capabilities, and India's technology prowess. And of course, the nearly 550 million customers who are on Airtel network between India, South Asia and Africa. This is for you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now there's another moment you've been waiting for. Yesterday we had the National Creator Awards, but this is the most viral selfie coming up. I'd like to request all the awardees to join us on stage for a group photograph, please. With the awards, of course, as Mr. Puri points out. There you go, the most viral moment of the day. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being an amazing audience. I'd like to thank our sponsors as well before we proceed to cocktails and dinner. The Business Today Best CEO Awards and Mindrush event was powered by Federal Bank, strategic partner, Darwin Platform Group of Companies, celebration partner, Radico Khaitan Limited, education partner, Hindustan Group of Institutions, industry partner, MIDC, and OOH partner, Capital Group. Thank you so much. I'm your host, Ayush Alavadi, saying, I'll see you next year. Adios.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Puri, for being here, and many congratulations for winning the Best CEO